Okay, so we will be having this economy module of this PT 100. So the today's lecture is more based on national income accounting and all the GDP concepts. Okay. So first of all, if I ask you what is the difference between a GDP and national income? The difference between GDP and national income?
GDP is more concerned with the territory of the nation, while national income is more concerned with the citizens of the nation.
Citizen of a nation. Anything else?
Definition.
That you have defined the concept regarding GDP is one of the metric. It is a metric to be calculated. And what we are looking at? National income. Difference क्या है? Suppose if I say you are good at mathematics or you have good mathematical aptitude, how would I know that? I'll have to evaluate on certain parameters like algebra, geometry and something like that. So evaluation is done on certain things like algebra and all those. That is what GDP is. We are calculating certain things which has certain methodology. But what we are looking at is national income. In terms of the concept, you are saying it is dependent on the territoriality concept or nationality concept. So don't go deep into it. What is the difference between nationality and citizenship concept? Because there is a difference between economic concept of nationality and the legal concept of nationality. What you are saying, citizenship is all about the legal concept of nationality. It's all related to the economic activity where you are getting taxed. That is the idea. If you are getting taxed at a particular place, then that becomes your nationality. And GDP is all about the territoriality concept, the border concept, boundary concept. Before that, we'll be actually having a look at the topics that would be covered today. So we'll be actually moving quickly because you all have certain bases all on the concepts. So first of all, we'll be going into the factors of production. That is the whole idea about economics. You need to know about this thing and then we'll quickly move on to the topics. Then we'll go into the sectors of economy, how sectors of economy is getting classified as per standardized format or how government of India classifies it. Then we'll have the concept of growth versus development. Quickly, these things are not part of national income. It starts from this, the national income and the GDP concept. But before that, you need to build all the ideas. Then we'll look at the concepts like factor cost, basic price and market price. Then here it is the difference. National income aggregates. Because national income is a broader concept. We are looking at calculating things. But there are different things that we need to calculate at. And those things comes under the aggregate measures of national income. Then we'll look into the real, nominal and the purchasing power parity, PPP. Then at the last, we'll be looking at the GDP calculation methodologies. So what is the difference between method and methodology? If I ask you what is the method and what is the methodology, do this mean the same thing?
Methodology is a standard way of.
Exactly. Methodology is all the process that goes into coming out with a process, or you can say output, that will be using it. The thing that we use is the method, but the thing that goes behind it is the methodology. Okay? It's more related to the research part. So the topics, that is broadly as per the prelims syllabus. These are the topics. So national income, banking, this is the most important topics because most of the questions are coming from this banking and the financial market part. Then this is the classic thing that you need to know, inflation, unemployment and poverty, because there are different methodology that comes into picture, how these things are getting calculated. There are two things. One is estimation. One is calculation. Calculation is based on concrete data. Estimation is based on certain things where you try to gauge idea because you do not have data about all the things that you need to calculate. So that is why when we say national income, it is all about estimation, not calculation, because you cannot have the capacity to go to every household and ask what is your income. It is not feasible. So that is why we estimate it. Okay? Then we will see into the fiscal policy or the government budgeting part. Here we will be looking into the taxation part also. So taxation and government budgeting more related to the fiscal policy. Then this is the agroeconomy, the broader cropping pattern, PDS and marketing, agri-marketing reforms. Then this is the external sector, balance of payment and exchange rate management systems. So in exchange rate we will be seeing at the exchange rate system as well as exchange rate management system. Basically floating fixed rate system and exchange rate systems, nominal rates, real rates, these things. Okay. Then WTO, international institutions, government schemes and policies. Policies, more precisely trade policy and PLI scheme, that is important. PLI scheme because we do not have any specific, you can say, industrial policy right now. We are still following that as per the government record, we do not have any industrial policy after, you can say, the new economic policy. We had a national manufacturing policy that was unveiled in 2011, but we have not still met the targets. So we have brought a specific scheme, that is PLI scheme, and we are building upon that. So post budget, or you can say post this government, this election, we will come up with a comprehensive industrial policy.
Industries are not going to come here?
Industries?
For prelims, are they not important? Or
you need to just know the data.
Okay.
That is more important. So that would be covered in the policy part.
Okay, the data regarding various sectors.
Sectors of economy as well as different policy related to those sectors.
So is there any source for the data, or you will help us in getting that?
I have taken government data, most of the data. See, one of the data that has been brought is the economic review data. That is, you can say, the best data that the government has brought in the last 10 years. The economic review. It gives a proper data about everything that the government has done in the last 10 years. Okay? And to add to that, there are various estimates that the government brings out. So factors of production. So any economic activity has 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and enterprise or entrepreneurship. So basic idea is to segment things in terms of fixed cost and the variable cost, and what should be the contribution. So land becomes a part of the fixed cost. Fixed cost means it cannot be changed in short term. It is very difficult to change land or any production capacity in short term. When we are talking about land, it is not restricted to the land because we are talking about any sector of economy. All these terms are more related with the agriculture. All because economy has been evolving from agriculture. That is why all the terms have been taken from agriculture. So land means any area where any economic activity is carried out. So that becomes in virtual space also. If I ask you what is the land in a service sector for a virtual world, what could be the land? The servers. It is very difficult to have additional capacity of server in short term. That could be the land, the fixed cost. Irrespective of the volumes, irrespective of the, you can say, the traffic, you need to pay certain rent on it. That becomes the land, the fixed cost. So relative to any other sector, for the factories it is the building, the area where they have acquired land and build the production plant. That becomes the land. Then becomes the labor. This is the variable cost. Variable and fixed cost means whether the capacity can be altered in short term or not. So fixed, it becomes the variable cost. So labor is all related with the skill set, and that is why it is considered as human capital, and that is differentiated from the capital part. When we talk about capital, land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship, capital is something different, but this is a human capital because we are paying due remuneration as per the skill set. Then becomes capital. Capital is anything that generates income. It is anything that generates income. In terms of factors of production, it is anything that is required to start the company or to start the business activity. And any capital that is injected into any company is needed to be paid with the interest or a part of profit, depending upon what type of capital it is. Either it is a debt capital or an equity capital. It depends on because it needs certain remunerations, and the remuneration that goes against capital is interest payment. Then becomes enterprise. Any idea or any, you can say, venture that tries to combine all three factors of production for any meaningful economic activity. For any meaningful economic activity, that becomes an entrepreneurship, or the business activity is known as enterprise, and that is all concerned with the profits. They are all concerned with the profit part. And apart from the profit part, I would say from the profit part, one of that goes to the distributed profit. All because some of the capital that they borrowed all because of the capital they got it from investors. So it is all related with the undistributed part of the profit. Okay. So two things need to be clear at this point. There are two things. Individual is a separate entity from a firm. From the enterprise, I should say. So whatever we are talking is all with respect to this enterprise, not with respect to the person who is running those enterprise. All because the person who is running the enterprise is getting certain remuneration under the labor part. Under the labor part, in terms of salaries or in terms of any compensation, like ESOPs. That becomes remuneration part. But what we are talking is with respect to the enterprise. How enterprise is combining. It is the one which is hiding, you can say, the skill sets or the person who is running the company. And that is why any liability or anything that accrues to any enterprise, it is all related with the enterprise, not to the individual who runs the enterprise. ये हमेशा कॉन्सेप्ट में रहना चाहिए कि कोई भी चीज़ फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन कुछ भी चीज़ दैट इज रिलेटेड विद द बिजनेस एक्टिविटी, नॉट टू द पर्सन हु इज रनिंग दैट बिजनेस. ठीक है. नाउ सर्कुलर फ्लो ऑफ इनकम. इफ आई आस्क, you must have known this influx and outflux एक concept होता है. Suppose there is a equilibrium, what would happen? What is input is output. Equal. The same thing goes with the economy. What is going into the system, it is giving out in terms of value added products. That is the idea of That is the idea of circular flow of economy, because there is nothing which is causing any bottleneck. कोई भी पैसा हम लगा रहे हैं, कोई भी इनपुट्स दे रहे हैं, that is creating certain values or certain products. और इसी तरीके से we get to know about इसमें although there are 4 factors 3 factors models होते हैं जहाँ पे government भी आ जाता है, banks भी आ जाते हैं, then external sector also comes into picture. But in a nutshell, what is happening? Household, it is supplying, you can say, factors of production, it is getting factor income. It is getting factor income, all because it is supplying those factors of production. And that is why an entrepreneurship is also part of household, because it is supplying those skill sets, or you can say innovation, to combine those factors of production, and it is getting remuneration. At the same time, what the company or what the factory is generating or the firm is generating, it is generating certain products or value added products. It is generating value added products, and that is why it is known as goods and services, and that is getting consumed, and there is an equilibrium that is happening. Okay? And there, all because there is a concept of surplus and deficit. What capital or what remunerations those factors of production are getting, it is not getting consumed totally, so they have surpluses, and that is why banking system comes into picture. It tries to, you can say, negotiate between, or you can try to bridge that surplus and deficit by acting as an intermediary. At the same time, there is another, so surplus and deficit goes to banks or financial market. Financial market, all because we are not just restricting ourselves to the bank, we have an additional system that is known as financial market. Then at the same time, there is another regulator. This is the government. It tries to regulate things. Regulator की तरह काम कर रहा है. कहाँ पे deficit हो रहा है, तो वहाँ पे अगर उसको support system चाहिए, then the government comes up with subsidies. And suppose there is extra income that is getting generated, it tries to regulate it in terms of taxes. Regulation. ठीक है? ठीक है? And then there is another sector that is known as external sector. Suppose this household goes global. The concept of consumption of and production of goods and services is not just limited to the territorial concept. It goes global, then there comes another picture that is known as external sector, and the concept comes into picture that is known as imports and exports. All because foreign exchange is, you can say, linked with it. ठीक है, ये चार, ये पूरा सिस्टम जब होता है, the whole economic system comes into picture.
So the external sector is only linked with the trade with foreign countries, or the banks can also form a subset of external sector?
Sure, sorry.
Can the banks form a subset of the external sector, because there are banks which are in foreign countries also? That
is why I tell you, in external sector there are two components. One is the trade component or the current account. That is related with the trading of goods and services, and the surplus and deficit gets reflected in the capital account. Two things comes into picture. So this also becomes a part of the capital account. ठीक है ना? Now sectors of economy. In a crude nutshell, we try to classify things into these many sectors, but as per Government of India classification, they do not try to classify things into primary, secondary and tertiary, all because there is always interlinking. So it becomes very difficult to categorize things, क्योंकि जब calculation होगा, the contribution of secondary sector, there are certain things where primary sector has also role in secondary sector. So in crude manner, in activity terms, we have primary, secondary, tertiary as per the use of raw material. If it is getting used in natural form, then becomes primary sector. Like agriculture, mining, that becomes a part of primary sector. Secondary, any transformation that takes place. So there comes the concept of value chain. And what is that value chain? If I ask you what is that what is the meaning of value chain? There are two things, supply chain and value chain. What is the meaning of supply chain and value chain?
Supplying the raw materials and putting in the customer.
Supply chain is all related with movement of product from point A to point B. It relates with handling and distribution part. But when I say value chain, it is all related with addition of certain values to the preceding product. ठीक है ना? अगर हमने धान लिया, we harvested paddy and we try to beat it and convert it into beaten paddy, that is a value thing that is happening. So the chain is value chain. But supplying those paddy from point A to point B becomes a part of supply chain, because nothing value, no value is getting added. So that is why we try to say we need to increase the value chain and reduce the supply chain. If you need to increase the margins, you need to increase the value chain, reduce the supply chain. क्योंकि supply chain बस एक सामान को दूसरी जगह ले दो तो क्या होता है ना, हर जगह margins टूटते चले जाते हैं. But what if value is also getting added? Then it is better. That is why if agriculture produce or anything, any food grains that is getting consumed in raw form will add least value. But what if we try to convert it into certain processed item? Adding value, the price goes up and the consumer is ready to pay. All because value is getting added. That is why the concept of value addition comes into picture. तो कभी भी value addition की बात होगी, preceding product और नए product के बीच में कुछ changes आए हैं कि नहीं आए हैं. If there is certain change, then that becomes a part of value chain. That goes with agriculture, that goes with services, that goes with industry. Suppose in India, you try to import de-assembled bike and just try to assemble it and you sell it. On the face of it, it will look कि value addition हुआ है, but ज़्यादा बड़ा नहीं हुआ कुछ. It is just mere assembling. But what if कि हमने raw steel लिया था, उससे हमने punching करके हमने वो पार्ट बनाया, उसके बाद फिर आगे उसमें एडिशंस किया, फिर उसमें पेंटिंग किया, फिर उसमें नए टेक्नोलॉजी डाले और उस तरह से वैल्यूज ऐड होते चले गए. प्रीसीडिंग बाइक, नए बाइक में चेंजेस आ गए. देन दैट बिकम्स अ पार्ट ऑफ वैल्यू चेन एंड द कस्टमर इज रेडी टू पे फॉर इट. ठीक है ना? इंक्लूड सप्लाई चेन, इंक्लूड सप्लाई चेन. दैट वैल्यू चेन इज अ बिगर कॉन्सेप्ट. ठीक है ना? बट इसलिए व्हाट वी आर सेइंग, e-marketplace model is trying to reduce the supply chain. ठीक है ना? It is reducing supply, but in the service sector it is adding values. How? Because we are getting things on demand. ठीक है? And these based on the working condition, organized and unorganized sectors, depending upon the levels of social security benefits. If the enterprise is giving those social security benefits, there is a formal contract between employer and employee, that becomes a part of organized sector. But in the Government of India classification, the Government of India classifies as per the usage of electricity. Government of India does not classify things into informal and formal sector. They classify things in organized and unorganized, and that too it is an old classification. That depends on the number of people who are working. It is 10 persons with aid of power or 20 persons without power. If any firm or any business activity has this thing, then that becomes a part of organized sector. And that is why in organized sector there are two things: EPFO, ESIC. How many of you are aware of this? Provident Fund and State Insurance Corporation in terms of the hospitals for those people who are working, workers. So there also the cutoffs are 10 and 20. So if the numbers, electricity. If they are using electricity, that becomes organized sector. So they say EPFO has also this concept ki if the employer has 20 persons, they need to get registered with the EPFO. That is mandatory, and that goes with ESIC also 10. So from there the concept of organized and unorganized came into picture. But what we are seeing is organized but informal. What does that mean? The Indian market, or you can say Indian enterprises, are organized but informal.
Without EPFO
Exactly, contractualization of workforce they are doing. What they are doing कि 20-25 को they are showing as formal employees, and they have 80 and 90 people as part-time or contracts through third-party contracts. They hire a contractor and they use it. ठीक है ना? So there is a concept of informalization of workforce in the organized sector. So as to reduce the main idea is to make things competitive, to increase the margins. To by how कैसे कर सकते हैं? To reduce the cost. It is easy to reduce variable cost, the labor cost. ठीक है? Then this assets ownership, public sector and private sector based on who owns it. If the government has the control on the management, that becomes a part of public sector. But the government of India classifies things as agriculture, industries and services. So what they say, one is agriculture.
The sector of limited तो same होता है ना?
Sectors?
Or limited like public limited or private limited.
That is dependent on number of investors. If there are more than one person, then that is more related to the companies. ठीक है ना? Private investors. Up to 200 based, but certain approvals. The moment it goes public, it means that it is issuing shares. Infinite investors then. So that is the concept of. वो कंपनी का है. एक फर्म को कैसे हम रजिस्टर करा रहे हैं? Either it can be proprietorship. Proprietor means the person who is the owner of the firm, or it can be a limited liability partnership LLP firm, or it can be private limited company. The company has those limited and public limited or private limited company. Private limited company has a limit of not more than 50 shareholders. That can exceed up to 200. There are certain conditions under that Companies Act. But the moment it goes to a public limited company, that means the company is issuing shares to the public. That is
a government company.
Any company. It can be any company. It can be a private company. It can be a government company. ठीक है ना? And there is also a concept of corporation limited. Then if those investors are huge and the assets of the company, that becomes corporation limited. Any issue?
Public limited like it's a government company or like.
No, it can be a private company. It can be a private company. But if you see PVT Ltd at the last, it gives a signal that this company has not issued shares to the public. That is the only concept. HDFC would write HDFC Limited. It won't write HDFC PVT Ltd. Because HDFC issued shares. जिसने PVT Ltd लगाया, that means the number of investors are less than 50. Investor, not the workers. See, so agriculture and allied activity, allied sectors can be livestock, dairy. There is also agroforestry. जैसे plywood बनता है ना, so they have a specific forestry they create, and that from there they cut trees, and that is a part of, if they grow trees for commercial purposes, that becomes a part of agroforestry. ठीक है? Then industries. Under industries there is one heading that is known as manufacturing. Under industry there is one heading that is known as manufacturing. There are other headings also, we will see that. And the third is services, which tries to give service to the two sectors. Apart from that, they also have higher order services like innovation, research and higher order decision making abilities. Manufacturing, if I see the sectoral contribution, the agriculture and allied sector is roughly 18% of GDP. It is roughly 28%, industry as a whole. But for the manufacturing part, it is 17%. So industry as a whole has a contribution of 28% roughly. Out of it 17% of the GDP country gets from manufacturing sector, and we had this aim of increasing it to 25 by 2022, but still 17-18% roughly, and it has stagnated at that position, all because we are experiencing higher economic growth, but that is in the service sector. So the contribution of manufacturing is not out of 28, not out of whole 100 manufacturing.
So that we have in the sheet. So the number 1 is of agriculture and allied. So number 2 to number
Exactly. That is what I am coming to this. The first is agri and allied. All because there's a concept, like we'll see in the methodology, the government of India has switched to GVA method of accounting. So that is why gross value added, the government tries to have those value added from different sectors. So this is the data, this is the latest data that has been brought in. Then from 2, 3, 4, 5, this is industries. Like construction comes in secondary activity, but real estate sale and purchase comes under tertiary activity or the service sector. The part construction comes under the secondary, but sale and purchase comes under the tertiary or the service sector. Then from 6, 7, 8 comes under services part. So if you roughly add those data, you that figure, 18% comes from agriculture and allied activity. So this accounts for roughly, if I ask, if it is 18 plus 28, 46, so roughly 50 to 54% comes from service sector. We'll see what is the issue with this. There's an issue of jobless growth, all because we do not have a higher employment from absorption of excess labor from agriculture into industries, all because the employment elasticity of service sector is the lowest out of all the 3 sectors. 400-500 चैट जीपीटी के लोग बैठे हैं, पूरे वर्ल्ड को कैटर कर रहे हैं. जोमेटो में कितने लोग होंगे? Roughly 2,000-3,000 employees, and they are catering the whole of India. But that is not possible for industries. Any sector, वहाँ पे तो 2,000-3,000 एक MSME के अंदर काम करते हैं. And that leads to wealth concentration also. So the concept of economic growth and economic development. So what is the meaning of economic growth? It is just an statistical increase, just quantitative statistical increase in the number. In the last, if I see, this 137 lakh crore, 47 lakh crore, it is economic growth. From 137 lakh crore to 147 lakh crore. So that is why there are various parameters we come to know through 2 parameters of economic growth. One is the growth rate, another one is per capita income. So that gives an idea about economic growth, but per capita income does not give the idea about economic development. So it is, so economic, if I ask you what is, if I say what is it, the economy grew at 7 in FY23, what does that mean? Previous year or the base year?
The previous year.
Then what is the use of base year in GDP?
To find the actual amount of that we have.
It is previous year. Base year is all needed to neutralize the effect of inflation. That is the only idea. कभी भी year on year होता है. There is a concept called YOY, QOQ, quarter on quarter or year on year. Previous year as compared to the new year. That is the growth rate, but the use of base year is all about neutralizing the effects of.
But the growth at the market price as well as the adjusted price on the base year, the growth will be similar no, in number.
No, you are comparing two things simultaneously. If I say GDP at market price, you need to specify we are calculating 2021-22 GDP MP and 22-23 MP. It cannot be GDP at factor cost at 1 year and GDP at market price at another year.
Not that thing, sir. I was telling that the percentage difference between what you can say adjusted price of the two consecutive year and the market price of the two consecutive year will be same. For example, we have compared the GDP of 2020 with the base year of 2011 and 2021 same, and then we have found the difference of the percentage that will show the growth.
But how can you say the percentage would be same?
Yeah, it will not be.
If I ask you 50 to 60 and 60 to 70, the quantum of difference is same, but is the percentage wise same?
No, that is what I am asking.
So that is the idea. Constant price and current price. The government of India classifies things as constant price and current price. ठीक है ना? We'll go one by one. Things तो आसान रहेगा, नहीं तो फिर थोड़ा. So these are two parameters, per capita income and economic growth rate. But why per capita income is not a good parameter of economic development?
It only talks about the monetary aspect of the growth, not the actual qualitative change.
How can you elaborate on this?
We can have inflation amount also, so that money may not actually translate to actual development of the people.
You can say the distribution of income. Per capita income does not give an idea about the distribution of income. One person can have, Mukesh Ambani has this fun fiesta going, and he has made sure that one of the airport has been declared as an international airport for 10 days. Number of chartered flights that have landed at that particular airport, मुझको नहीं लगता है कि चेन्नई में भी इतना लैंड करता होगा या दिल्ली में भी इतना एक दिन में लैंड करेगा. So that is why if Mukesh Ambani goes to that place, the whole per capita income gets distorted. So better income would be median income. So if I ask you how median income is a better indicator as compared to per capita income, what is the meaning of median? Mean, median, mode. Mean is the per capita. Average. This is the per capita basically. Median is the middle part. And mode is the highest frequency. So how can you say median income is a better indicator as compared to per capita income? Good evening.
The distribution. It is the distribution in a better sense, because the person who is in the middle will be reflected by the median income, not that.
The data would justify this. If I say 20, 30, 50 and 5,000, what is the average income? It would be more than 1,000. But even if I add 20,000, 5 crore, 10 crore, the median would be the average of 30 and 50. So it tries to neutralize those, you can say, anomalies. There is a concept of normal distribution curve. We are not bothered about people at this point. They are not a part of our calculation as far as economy is all about. Economy is all about allocation of finite resources. But those people have infinite resources. So they are not part of our economic concepts. So that is why median income talks about this part. Okay, na? So that is why median income is a better indicator. In mains also you can write those things. And why we are not switching to median income? Exactly, we do not have the data. Until and unless we do not have the data about the economy does not get formalized. Agar formal economy ho jayega na, then we'll have the data. Even if we are having zero taxpayers in terms of zero return, why the government tries to say even if you are earning zero or the net taxable income is less, try to file income tax return so as to ensure they get the data. नहीं तो डेटा कैसे आएगा? वो तो they'll just depend on the survey. Survey is something different, census is something different. ठीक है ना? So economic growth is just, I told you, 137 से 147, 157. This is the percentage terms. This is the economic growth. But if in terms of economic development, it is more related with, in economic development, growth plus distribution. So economic development has to have that growth part also. So that is why अगर growth नहीं होगा ना तो share बढ़ा ही नहीं होगा. Then we have the government policies that tries to distribute, and that term is known as resource mobilization through taxations and subsidies and various government schemes. So that is the idea. अगर किसी भी चीज़ में देखें ग्रोथ नंबर्स में, अगर फॉर एग्जांपल अगर फ़ोन के लिए भी बात करें तो नंबर ऑफ सिम कार्ड्स गेटिंग जनरेटेड विथ vis-a-vis or number of transactions that have increased, digital transactions, if I say, that is the growth part. But if I say the digital transaction has grown even in the rural areas, that becomes a part of economic development. All because the transactions that is getting increased, that has percolated to even the remotest part. We are witnessing this thing. That is why we are having this financial inclusion. नहीं तो क्या transaction तो पहले भी था, NEFT, RTGS, all because of UPI, we had this financial inclusion, and this is you can say a parameter of economic growth or economic development, I should say. So economic development has a part of economic growth in it. Economic development बिना growth से नहीं हो सकता है कभी भी. Growth होना पड़ेगा. And there the role of government comes into picture. How they are efficiently distributing that growth. ठीक है? So as per World Bank's classification, they classify countries into 4 categories based on per capita income. So we are currently lower middle income. So by 2030 or 2028, it is projected that we'll go into, and by that time China would be high income. But that does not tell about the story of distribution of income, because the recent consumption expenditure surveys have been brought in. So the All India Consumption Level Survey says that roughly 2,000 rupees per day, month, that defines the person is poor or rich, or not poor, I should say, not rich, poor or not poor. If the person is not consuming more than or spending more than rupees 2,000 per month, comes under the poor category. ठीक है? They have highlighted the data, average is roughly 4,000, 5,000, but the poverty level is roughly, as per the data that has been decided, is roughly 2,000 rupees per month. So the data as per Rangarajan, it was rupees 850. So there is no visible change in those 12 years, I should say, 10 to 12 years. Roughly it has just gone to 2.2 times. Even though the economy has grown by more than that. So visible, the real expenditure, I should say, has actually gone down. ठीक है? So this is the economic development. It talks about non-economic factors also. Then we'll see certain concepts of microeconomy, normal goods, then inferior goods, all because sometimes UPSC has this, because a knack of asking certain things from microeconomics also, and precisely more related with the goods or the elasticity concept. कभी कभार डाल देंगे वो एक क्वेश्चन किस तरह का. So you need to know things about the normal goods. What is the normal goods? There is a concept of law of demand and law of supply. It says that keeping other factors constant. So the law of demand says as price go up, the demand should go down. But that is only applicable to normal goods. There are many other goods which violate those law of demand and law of supply. And as per the law of supply, it is keeping other factors. Other factors means ki short term mein supply, if that can be increased or not. The technology has grown, the preference has differed. So those factors are kept constant. Then law of supply says as price increases, the supply would increase because it gives a signal to the seller, or you can say to those suppliers, that there is a higher chance of probability of earning more profits. And that is why if you write answers in your mains and they say, does inflation give any signal? Yes, it gives signal to those sellers, or you can say to those producers, to increase your production. So if you can say if anything is not done, in long term the inflation would be kept under control, because the suppliers would try to supply more goods, because the margins are increasing. ठीक है ना, इस कारण से वो करते हैं. Then there is inferior goods, where the demand decreases as the income rises. For example, poor quality goods, which are not part of, you can say, not, they violate this law of demand and supply. Giffen good. This is one of the most peculiar. There was a concept in this greedflation, एक concept आया था. So what is that? How do that? कैसे करते हैं वो? So what happens? In short term, the inflation rises. It gives a signal that the price would go up. They try to say that our input costs have also risen, so they try to increase the price. But in the long term, the inflation is moderated, but they do not reduce the price so as to increase the margins. So this is actually greedflation, all because the prices have gone up, not fueled by inflation, fueled by corporate greed. So that becomes a concept of microeconomy, not a macroeconomy.
Sir, windfall tax also come under this?
Windfall tax is more related to the, you can say, government regulation for ensuring profiteering is not done. There is a concept called profit making and profiteering. Suppose the prices of crude oil has gone up so much, all because of speculative things or some announcements, not because of the cost of production getting increased. So that gives a higher margins for those oil producing companies. So that is why the government comes up with additional duties, taxes, and that is why it is told it is known as windfall tax, so as to reduce that windfall profit. Windfall profit को reduce करने के लिए करते हैं. ठीक है? So given good is the demand increases with the increase in prices. It is more related with essential goods. But why does it increase? No one has the idea. They say that there is a potential, you can say, expectation or future expectation that it would create shortfall. So that is why this price signal gives a, you can say, a signal to the buyer to increase your stock. So they keep on buying things. That was seen in the, you can say, COVID times. COVID times are just pre-COVID. There was an issue कि shortfall होने लग गए थे. The prices kept on, still the demand went, or stock out situation happened. The government had to come up with the regulation and advisories that we have sufficient, you can say, inventories. So that happened. So given good essential goods में ऐसा होता है. That is more related with food items.
But that is not to the goods itself, but that is to the circumstances. That
Circumstance, exactly.
So will we attach that quality to the goods and we'll call them as given goods in that sense? Or?
Exactly what, that is why it is a peculiar, all why the prices are rising. A particular good cannot be said as given good. It is all dependent on the circumstance. It is all related with the consumption item or how is the economic situation. ठीक है? Supply and demand. Then Veblen good, luxury goods. So what happens? The price increases, demand increases, because It gives a symbol of status. All because the cost has risen and you say that we have the affordability to buy those things. Substitute, which can be substituted. So if I say the price of substitute increases, what would be the effect on the main good?
Demand will increase.
Increase. Because it is very tough to switch to another substitute because the cost has increased. But complementary, it is opposite because it is used along with the main good. So if the cost of complementary increases, it is likely that the demand of the main good would fall down. ठीक है ना? That goes with petrol and car. If the prices of petrol goes to an unaffordable high, the demand of car would also go down. ठीक है ना? But in terms of end use, it is raw material or input goods which are used in production. So any good can be an input good or can be a finished good, depends upon the value chain. Like sugar can be an input good as well as a raw material, a finished good. ठीक है ना? Depending upon the person is eating sugar, consuming it. ठीक है ना? So that is why there is a concept of sugar cane पे ना, the government gives FRP and sugar पे government gives MSP. All because sugar cane, what the government thinks, sugar cane cannot be eaten in raw form. So there is a support to the growers, the farmers from the mill, those who are using it as raw material. But sugar as an MSP is all about consuming sugar in final form. Sugar and sugarcane. Sugarcane has FRP, fair and remunerative prices. Sugar has MSP, all because sugar is considered as a good which can be consumed in final form. ठीक है? तो ये चीज raw material depending upon the usage.
We give MSP on sugar also.
Yes, but we do not procure it. All because the prices in the market is higher than the MSP that is given.
So it comes under 23.
Yes,
Which is there.
but still they do not procure it. The procurement is roughly 90% wheat and rice, 5% millet. Which is?
Unlimited, what do you say, MSP on wheat and
In terms of the production or in terms of the procurement, yeah, that is unlimited. Any MSP is unlimited. The quantity has not been defined.
But in actual practice it is not followed.
All because the government, there are bulk purchasers also which are offering better prices. See, if Ashirvad Atta comes and say that we are paying you better prices, then farmer would sell to Ashirvad Atta. ठीक है ना? That is why MSP has lower quality goods. All because the higher quality goods are taken up by those big bulk purchasers. ठीक है ना? And final goods. So final goods or any intermediate goods in any production is not counted. But any good can be an intermediate good or a final good depends upon the value chain. ठीक है ना? सपोज एक कार हमने यूज किया एंड यूज के लिए, दैट बिकम्स अ फाइनल गुड फॉर अस. बट व्हाट इफ वो कार से कुछ एक्स्ट्रा नया चीज कुछ बनाएंगे, या फिर वो सर्विस सेक्टर के लिए एक उबर के वो चल रहा है, या फिर किसी ने अपना स्टार्ट किया वेंचर, तो दैट बिकम्स एन इंटरमीडिएट गुड और रॉ मटेरियल फॉर द टैक्सी इंडस्ट्री. डिपेंड करता है कि वो कैसा. फिनिश्ड गुड इज ऑल अबाउट एंड कंजम्पशन. ठीक है ना? एंड फ्रॉम देयर वी हैव अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ड्यूरेबल, नॉन ड्यूरेबल फॉर कंज्यूमर गुड्स and there is another one which is known as capital goods. So if I say capital goods in terms of economy, that is all related with the machinery part. Machineries are considered as part of capital goods, all because they are generating income. That is not part of consumer goods, but that depends on the usage. Now the concept, अब यहाँ से start होगा, national income. So national income is all related with factor income. National income is all related with the concept of factor income that is earned by factors of production. So there is a concept of nationality, but in economics it is all related with the concept of residency. ज़्यादा डीप में मत जाओ, कॉन्सेप्ट थोड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो जाता है रेजिडेंसी को कॉन्सेप्ट को लेकर के. नेशनैलिटी, स्टिक टू द नेशनैलिटी पार्ट. If any foreigner is earning things from India, working in India, that would be considered as a part of factor income paid to abroad. But that is all related with the exact concept. It is related with the concept of residency, whether the person is resident, economic resident or not. That depends on the stay as well as taxation. Simply, a person is resident to a particular country if the person is paying taxes. Simple. अगर वो रेजिडेंट होगा ना कहीं का, वहीं का टैक्स पे कर रहा होगा. अगर वो कहीं दूसरी जगह का टैक्स पे करेगा तो वहाँ का रेजिडेंट हो जाएगा, क्रूड कॉन्सेप्ट में. बट नेशनैलिटी, स्टिक टू दैट नेशनैलिटी पार्ट, बिकॉज यूपीएससी कभी भी उस पर नहीं जाएगा कि डिफरेंशिएट बिटवीन रेजिडेंशियल कॉन्सेप्ट एंड नेशनैलिटी कॉन्सेप्ट. ठीक है. बट द इंडिकेटर दैट इज यूज्ड टू मेजर नेशनल इनकम इज जीडीपी. The government of India uses this term national income. National income हमेशा वो use करेंगे, लेकिन what we are measuring is GDP. GDP. Because there are three methods. Income methods के अंदर आने के कारण we try to say कि ये national income है, because we say what is getting produced is getting consumed, what is getting paid is earned. All because of the circular flow of economy. ठीक है.
national income and GDP, they are the same.
See, national income is a broader concept. So GDP per se is one of the form of national income, one of the metrics of national income. GDP, if I say what is the national income of India, you would say that is an incomplete question, sir. What you are asking?
It considers the resident income from abroad also,
no? No. What I'm saying, that is NNP and NDP, that would come. If I say ki what is the national income of India, you'd say that is an absurd question, because you are not specifying things what type of national income you are asking. Whether you are asking national income that is a net domestic product or net national product at factor cost, or you are asking net domestic product at market price, because these are various metrics of calculating national income. So one of the crude metric or one of the most popular metric around the world is calculating GDP. ठीक है ना, ये चीज़ है. नेशनल इनकम एक ब्रॉडर चीज़ हो गया. उसमें से हमने बोला कि कुछ चीज़ तो कैलकुलेट करेंगे, कि हवा में बोलते जाएंगे कि नेशनल इनकम. You need to specify things because it is more statistical thing. We say we need to devise a metric and we'll say that metric as GDP. Or there are various other metrics that is generated or that is calculated from that GDP based on certain calculations, and those things come under aggregates of national income.
So in general, GDP is a way of calculating national income.
GDP is one of the, you can say, matrix of national income. Just like if you are say you are good at mathematics, I'll ask you how. Whether you are good at algebra, whether you are good at geometry, whether you are good at trigonometry. A person good at trigonometry might not be good at algebra. Does that mean he is not good at mathematics? He is good at mathematics, but all because we are analyzing different metrics. So there are different metrics which are under a part of broader metric that is known as national income. But in colloquial or in informal terms, national income is all equal to GDP. ठीक है ना? नेशनल इनकम को क्या कर रहे हैं? जीडीपी जीडीपी जीडीपी, एंड जीडीपी इज ऑल इक्वल टू नॉमिनल जीडीपी. रियल का किसी को कोई मतलब नहीं होता. रियल इज ऑल, आई विल कम टू दैट कि इंट्रा एंड इंटर कैलकुलेशंस, कंपैरिजंस. So there is always a concept of accounting period. There are three things: accounts, finance, economy. I would say economics should be the exact word. Accounts is bookkeeping, systematically recording transactions. So national income is all about national income accounting. How do you systematically record those transactions? Then comes finance part. How do you analyze those things? And economy is how things are getting in the real world. This is the application. This is the thing that is generating data which is getting captured in this, and the tools which are getting used is finance. इस तरह से काम करता है. इकोनॉमी ये देख के काम नहीं करेगा, अच्छा जीडीपी पिछले साल इतना था तो एग्रीकल्चर को जबरदस्ती इंजन दे देते ज़्यादा बढ़ने का. It is autonomous, it is going on as it is. It does not have to look at the data. It is giving certain parameters which is getting calculated, and from there into the accounting of things, recording transactions. ठीक है, रिकॉर्डिंग ट्रांजैक्शंस, और उसके बाद उस पर एनालिसिस करते, दैट बिकम्स अ पार्ट ऑफ फाइनेंस. ठीक है ना. बट फाइनेंस इन अ क्रूड टर्म्स इज ऑल रिलेटेड विद द फर्म लेवल एनालिसिस, नॉट ब्रॉडर मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक लेवल एनालिसिस, माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक लेवल एनालिसिस. तो इस तरह से काम करता है. So there are two things. One is stock variable, another is flow variable. So if I ask you, give any real life example of stock variable. What can be said that this is a part, this is a metric that is being referred to as stock variable. What is the meaning of stock variable? Which can be calculated at a particular point of time. आज के समय पे if I ask you how many books do you have in your bag, that becomes a part of stock variable. At a particular point of time, how many money do you have in your wallet, that becomes a stock variable. How much have you earned in the last 1 year, that becomes a part of flow variable.
What's the amount of money that you earn that can also be fixed?
How? But that is getting calculated over a period of time, na? How much have you earned at, I say 6:11 p.m. You will say that is an absurd question. How much have I earned? I need to look at the period. You can ask me how much have I earned today. That starts from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. The economic instant is stock,
And over period is
flow. ठीक है ना. ओवर अ पीरियड कोई, इफ जीडीपी, व्हाट इज द जीडीपी ऑफ इंडिया एट 6 p.m. दैट इज एन absurd क्वेश्चन. डज दैट मीन एनीथिंग? जीडीपी ऑफ इंडिया एट 10 p.m. बट व्हाट इज द एक्सचेंज रेट एट टुडेज एक्सचेंज? दैट इज अ स्टॉक थिंग. ठीक है ना. वो पीरियड ऑफ टाइम से उसको क्या मतलब है? उसको तो पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम में बोलोगे 2:15 पे कितना था एक्सचेंज रेट वैल्यू, यू विल गो एंड सी सर दिस इज द एक्सचेंज रेट वैल्यू. सो दैट बिकम्स अ स्टॉक वेरिएबल. Over a period becomes, what is the inflation is a flow variable. Stock, what is the inflation today? क्या मतलब है? पीरियड ऑफ टाइम पे कैलकुलेट करें, पीछे से आगे का कंपेयर कर रहे हैं ना, पीछे से आगे को कंपेयर कर रहे हैं, दैट बिकम्स अ फ्लो वेरिएबल.
Also, what about exports? The amount of goods that you exported today.
Flow.
So the number of goods that you exported today, we can calculate.
It's all about the value. But if I say what is the export, you'll say in which month, in which period you're asking. क्योंकि export एक समय में तो नहीं गया होगा, कुछ period पे हुआ होगा, और the import would have happened over a period of time, that becomes a part of flow variable.
So inflation is mentioned as a stock variable.
Inflation, that could be wrong then. Even that could be wrong. Inflation over a period, if anything is calculated over a period of time, YOY, QOY, QOQ, that becomes a flow variable.
Price would be a stock variable.
Price would be a stock variable. At that price, what is the price today? So that is why stock market is a stock market. Currency market, that is also a stock variable. But what is the profit? Flow variable. But what is the reserves? It is a stock variable. What is the profit of the company, you will say? It is calculated over a period, economic period. But I will say, what is the reserves of the company? You will say, as on this is the reserve of the company. Just like the wallet, the money in your wallet.
But we can also say that stock variables are also independent.
How can you calculate, how are you actually differentiating dependent and independent
Because
first?
flow variable we are measuring from a particular date to a particular date. So the back data and the present data is also needed to calculate certain things.
That is the period I am saying.
Yes, flow. And for example, the
Independent and dependent are two different, is a different concept. Independent and dependent comes under the parameter of variables where x and y are two variables where y depends on x or not. That becomes dependent and independent.
Right, because in flow variable when we calculate GDP, for over a year we calculate from the last year to the present time.
Yes.
So over a period we are taking the final as well as the initial value. So for that reason I asked.
But how is it related to the dependent and independent? Dependent and independent are two different things. Dependent and independent. Dependent is which is dependent on one of the parameter which can change autonomously. The thing that can change autonomously is an independent variable. So those are two different bases of classification. Apple and orange को compare नहीं करोगे ऐसे तो फिर गलत comparison होगा. Stock flow depending on since or for. For or since का there is a concept in English where you have to write since, for. In the same manner, whether the variable is flow variable or a stock variable comes from whether you are calculating from a period of time or a particular point of time. But dependent and independent comes under BOP, you will say autonomous and accommodating transactions. Factor income and transfer income. A person, an NRI working in Dubai and he is earning some dirham, whether that would be calculated as a part of factor income for India? An NRI working in Dubai, whether he is earning things, whether that would be calculated as a part of factor income for India? But if he is sending money,
Net factor income from abroad is a calculated method that we use in factor income.
no. Factor income, if that NRI, whether he is paying India's tax, no, he is paying his. So the factor income would be calculated in the Dubai's GDP, but he is sending remittance to India, and that does not become a part of factor income, it becomes a part of transfer income. That becomes a part of transfer income. Transfer, unilateral transfers. So it is just a way to classify things. कोई ऐसा बड़ा वो नहीं है. If things are getting transferred without any factors of production getting involved, any factor input getting input that is given, जैसे taxes, subsidies which is given by the government to poor people, is it factor income for those poor people? It's a transfer income. But what is the difference between grants versus grants? Are grants factor income or factor payments or transfer payments? Assistance?
It is assisting to do something, so it will become a factor.
नहीं, assistance मतलब कि external terms होते हैं. There are three terms: loans, grants, assistance. Whenever there are any transfers between two government and some financial institutions to any government entity, it comes under only 3 headings. कोई भी payment होगा, either it could be either it would be a loan, or it could be grant, or it could be assistance. Grant is unilateral, that has not to be repaid. No repayment.
Paying additionally in terms of like disaster management or something.
That is that has not to be repaid. That it becomes anything that has to be repaid becomes a part of liability. तो कैपिटल मार्केट का कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाएगा, तो फिर इंटरेस्ट का कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाएगा, फैक्टर इनकम या फैक्टर पेमेंट आ जाएगा. लोन has to be repaid. It is a factor payment because it is charged with certain interest or penalties if it is not paid. And what is assistance? Remittances. And what is assistance? If the loan is soft loan. And what is the soft loan? Lesser interest or more payment terms, payment year. So that becomes a part of, it has to be paid, but the interest would be charged, some portion would be waived off, or the payment terms would be extended as per the, you can say, affordability of the borrower.
Farmers are given assistance.
Waivers are grants. No, waivers जब दे दिया गया ना, that becomes a part of grant. पैसा वापस नहीं करना है.
So line of credit is assistance.
Assistance. Soft credits are part of assistance.
Farmers have to take a loan.
They take a loan, that is a loan, but the moment it is waived off, grant. But that is more related with, grant is more related with the state or the center giving certain grants to certain states which do not have the capability to repay it back. तो जिनके पास paying capacity है ही नहीं, that becomes a part of grant. Grant means nothing has to be repaid. ठीक है ना? तो grant becomes a part of transfer payments. Assistance का for example, World Bank gives many assistance to India for those projects like बहुत long term, like Japan has given JICA, there's a JICA gives soft loans, that becomes a part of assistance. Factor transfers could be or factor payments or transfer payment. Transfer means unilateral, no any outside activity. या तो उसको factor input नहीं मिलेगा या तो उसको repay नहीं करना पड़ेगा. That becomes a part of transfer payment. So what is the confusion you are having? I'd say stick to payment word. Don't say income part, because see, income and payment, that depends which you are looking at. A or B. A ने B को दिया, this is payment and this is income. तो हम A के बाद से A को देख रहे हैं बस. Double transaction system, debit and credit system is there because we are talking about accounting. कहीं पे निकला होगा तो कहीं से कम हुआ होगा. So if we are saying factor payment, assistance is a part of factor payment because it has to be repaid. Assistance has to be repaid. Only the payment terms are lenient. Grant is a part of transfer payment. ठीक है ना? But कभी-कभी तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स ग्रांट भी कभी-कभी वापस कर देते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ पॉलिटिकल रीजंस. क्योंकि एक इमेज भी जाता है पहला, दूसरा पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज के कारण हाँ दे ट्राई टू रिजेक्ट एंड दे ट्राई टू से कि विल यू आर सेंडिंग बैक द ग्रांट्स. So recently the data has come up that the Q3 growth rate has been 8.4%. Not GD. And GVA is 6.5. And the net difference is 1.9. So what does that signify?
That we are taxing more. That the increase is more in taxes, not in the actual.
Exactly. We are having the GDP growth rate at 8.4%, but the value added, in terms of value added by different sectors that we had seen the gross value added is only 6.5% increase over the last year. So 1.9% excess is all related with the taxes, and that comes under the part of net indirect taxes or net taxes. What the government has said that our tax buoyancy is higher, we are collecting more taxes and we are also having lower expenditure on subsidies. So transfer payments have gone down and collections or the tax mobilization has gone up. So net we are at positive. So GDP at market price is reflecting a bigger value as compared to the GVA at basic price. This is a concept. The government of India switched from GVA at factor cost to GVA at basic price.
So can we talk about this after we have done basic price and market?
Oh yeah. Okay. So net indirect taxes are, don't see कि indirect taxes का मतलब खाली वो direct and indirect taxes है. It's all about the taxes, net taxes. It's the taxes minus subsidies. So subsidies are transfer payments. Straight in economic terms, subsidies की जगह word कर सकते हैं transfer payments. So the government has said that, or the analysis which has come from the data that has been generated is that the subsidy has gone down, all because there are two things that are happening. We have a lower fertilizer subsidy का जो burden है that has gone down this year. At the same time, the tax buoyancy, the tax collection is at the all-time high. We are projected to collect roughly 30 lakh crores of taxes total, the direct tax as well as indirect taxes.
Why do we mention indirect tax when we calculate national income?
It is said net taxes. This is an economic terminology, net NIT, but that is the net taxes. Just like net exports, it is the net taxes.
So we also do direct taxes in this?
नहीं, अब क्यों होता है इसमें exactly वो बताता हूँ. When we say GVA part, it is all related with production. Indirect taxes, direct taxes का concept तब आता है when we calculate personal disposable income and personal income. There is a concept of personal income and personal disposable income. After national income, there are two other metrics, that is personal income and personal disposable income, and there the concept of direct taxes comes into picture. ठीक है ना? All because we are seeing at the firm level. GVA process में we are seeing at the production level things. तो वहाँ पे उस तरह से इसलिए calculations है. ठीक है? Then market price, it is consumer price or factor cost plus net indirect taxes. All we are seeing goods and services getting produced and getting consumed. So most of the taxes on goods and services are indirect taxes. Most of the taxes on goods and services are indirect taxes, and most of the taxes on incomes and surpluses are direct taxes. So income and surpluses comes after those national income का calculation में personal and personal disposable income में निकाल देते हैं उसको. हालांकि in national income, the chart, if you see, they talk about the net taxes, total tax collection. They say total whatever we are calculating, whatever the taxes that we have, you can say received, we will add it for the market price. Generally यही होता है. ठीक है ना? Direct अलग अलग division नहीं करते हैं. So this is the factor price or the market price minus indirect taxes, or market price means factor cost plus indirect net indirect taxes. Depreciation.
So cost and price is the same. Cost and price is the same.
Yes. Cost and price is just related with whether you are looking at from the producer's point of view or the consumer point of view. Consumer point of view, it is price. From producer point of view, it is cost. ठीक है? What is depreciation?
The amount of capital over a period of time, it waves it down.
But how can you relate it with the service sector?
It is amortization.
The capital that we are using.
Amortization is something different. Amortization is depreciating those things over a period का, वो period को word को कहते हैं amortization.
Whenever we use any capital, for example, this.
How can you? I got this. How can you relate it with the service sector?
The service sector, the goods that we are using, the service sector, they become
machinery use करते हैं.
obsolete over a period of time.
The technology The technology that we are using, that depreciates with time. You need it to update things, upgrade things. We are not thinking about his machines क्या खरीदा, but also the technology that goes into this. Just like पहले की कोडिंग मान लो क्रूड कोडिंग होती होगी. Now we need advanced machine learning level coding. We need to depreciate पुराने लेवल का जो कोडिंग होगा ना उसको डिप्रिसिएशन करते करते या तो उसको जीरो ले जाएंगे और विल ट्राई टू सेल इट. साल्वेज वैल्यू फाइनल निकल के आता है, उसमें से फाइनल वैल्यू कितना निकल के आया. इन सर्विस सेक्टर दैट हैपेंस. डिप्रिसिएशन उनका अपना कैलकुलेशन होता है. इवन दोज ट्रेनिंग्स दे ट्राई टू सी कि कितना ट्रेनिंग उन्होंने दिया, उस ट्रेनिंग से कितना वो उनका एफिशिएंसी धीरे धीरे विथ टाइम आपने किसी को ट्रेन किया, इट विल डिप्रिशिएट विथ टाइम. सो दे हैव दीज वो टर्म्स को कैसे वो सर्विस सेक्टर में निकालते हैं. ठीक है ना. इन कैपिटल गुड्स और इन दोज गुड सेक्टर और मैन्युफैक्चर इट इज इजी टू सी व्हाट इज द डिप्रिसिएशन. सो लोअर इज द डिप्रिसिएशन, हायर इज द एफिशिएंसी. लोअर डिप्रिसिएशन रेट होगा, इट इज अ सिग्नल ऑफ हायर एफिशिएंसी. और मोर प्रोडक्टिव use of capital. More productive use of capital, it gives a signal of economic efficiency. If the depreciation levels are down, it means that you are producing goods at a better quality and the capital पे जो cost कटता, that is why the another word of depreciation is also known as consumption of fixed capital. That is one of another terminology for what we say कि जो भी fixed capital what we have put in that gets consumed, that gets eroded with time, all because of usage. That is easy to visualize in physical term, but money को कैसे visualize करेंगे, all because the money that we are putting in to maintain it. So that is why if roads and bridges are getting built with poor quality, that means the depreciation rate would be higher in terms of maintaining it, maintaining those roads. The maintenance cost is an indicator of higher depreciation rate. So if the depreciation rates are lower, it means the technology and the quality of work is superior. Exactly, wear and tear updation. ठीक है ना. No, the moment it is getting out of the factory. Exactly, there's a difference out of the factory and to the market.
So out of the factory, the
factor cost.
And when it goes to the market, it becomes the market cost.
No, it becomes the market cost.
Market price.
Market price is all the what the consumer is paying. Producer, consumer. Producer would look at costs and consumer would look at price, and where the prices are there in the market में. But the market price includes taxation part also, because the consumer is paying at the maximum retail price or at the MRP, and it includes the taxes, inclusive of all taxes.
It does not include the profit, right? The market price
Includes the profit also. The moment it has left the factory, there is a pricing of goods that happens. There is two terms.
So, sir, the profit will be included in the factor.
Exactly, I am just giving you the details. There is a term known as COGS, cost of goods sold. ये फाइनेंस हो गया पूरा. This is X factory. फैक्ट्री से जब निकला तो ये प्राइस होगा उसका, कॉस्ट ऑफ गुड्स सोल्ड प्लस द मार्जिन्स, दिल से द मार्जिन्स। टर्म्स थोड़ा आजकल उस पर भी आ गया है, वो कौन सा अभी शो आता है, शार्क टैंक, द व्हाट द COGS, व्हाट इज द मार्जिन, सो दैट इज द प्रॉफिट। प्रॉफिट में वी आर डिफरेंट, what is the gross profit, net profit, operating profit, there are different things in the profit part. This is the price of the product X factory, or plus net indirect taxes, this becomes a part of MRP.
So the factor cost is the actual incurred cost by the production.
Exactly. Exactly.
Direct taxes, indirect taxes being.
And that is why there is a concept in inflation, WPI. Those producers try to gauge that WPI. Consumer tries to gauge that CPI. So this is how prices are. तो कभी कभी वो रहता है कि इस तरह से चेंज चलता है. Although this is a crude, there are various other things also, distributors margin, retailers margin, बहुत से चीज़ ऐड करके फिर MRP पे आता है. आई एम सेइंग कि ये होलसेलर के पास जो गया होगा वो, देन देयर इज पहले डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर, होलसेलर, रिटेलर, तब जाता है. एंड दैट इज व्हाई दैट बिकम्स अ पार्ट ऑफ सप्लाई चेन, बिकॉज देयर इज नो वैल्यू एडिशन. वैल्यू एडिशन तो यहाँ खत्म हो गया, उसके बाद तो वैल्यू एडिशन कुछ है ही नहीं उसमें. एंड द मोर द लॉन्गर द चेन, इट इज ऑल एडिशनल कॉस्ट दैट इज गेटिंग borne by the consumer, that is not getting passed on to the producer also, because if producer has higher margin, he will try to expand his production capability, but all that is getting pocketed by those middlemen. They are not adding values, but they are only increasing the cost or the prices of the goods. ठीक है ना, इस तरह से चलता है. Then we have a concept of NFIA. It is factor income earned from abroad. By minus factor income paid to foreigners working in India. ठीक है ना, NFIA इसमें. डोंट गो इनटू दैट रेजिडेंसी कॉन्सेप्ट और नेशनैलिटी कॉन्सेप्ट. नेशनैलिटी को लेके चलो, बिकॉज UPSC में इतना डीप नहीं आने वाला है. वो इकोनॉमिक्स अगर आपका ऑप्शनल होता है, देन यू नीड टू नो कि व्हाट इज द क्राइटेरिया फॉर रेजिडेंसी एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स. देन देयर इज अ कॉन्सेप्ट कॉल्ड बेसिक प्राइस, एंड दिस इज द चेंज दैट हैज हैपेंड आफ्टर 2015. So one thing in the real and nominal GDP will come to that part. So basic price is all about factor cost plus net production taxes. What? It is just an accounting, उसको जो anomaly था, it is getting fixed. What is international standard? That irrespective of the output that is getting generated, there are certain taxes which has to be borne by the producer बिफोर स्टार्टिंग द बिजनेस. लैंड पे रेवेन्यू, जो भी कस्टम्स, लाइसेंस, फीस, ये सब लेते जो हैं, दैट हैज़ टू बी बॉर्न बाय द प्रोड्यूसर इररेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द आउटपुट गेटिंग जनरेटेड. सो दोज पार्ट बिकम्स पार्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन टैक्सेस दैट आर इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ द वॉल्यूम्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन दैट इज हैपनिंग. एक प्रोडक्शन करो या जीरो करो, द मोमेंट यू हैव स्टार्टेड अ बिजनेस यू नीड टू पे दोज थिंग्स. ठीक है. And subsidies, some simultaneous, net means taxes that has been paid or the subsidies which has been given by the government. कभी कभी government gives concessional rates for land revenue, जब land का जो taxation होता है ना, to attract those big businesses into investments into those, तो वो subsidy का part हो जाता है. ठीक है ना. So that becomes a part of production taxes. There's another concept that is known as product taxes, and those taxes which are dependent on volumes like excise duties, that becomes a part of product taxes. जितना वॉल्यूम जनरेट करोगे उतना आपको टैक्स लगेगा. ठीक है. इंडिपेंडेंट होगा, जो स्टार्ट करो, चाहे आपने खर्च किया, चाहे आपने एक भी यूनिट निकाला या नहीं निकाला, यू हैव टू पे इट. ठीक है. प्रोडक्ट एंड प्रोडक्शन. सो बेसिक प्राइस इज ऑल रिलेटेड टू द फैक्टर कॉस्ट plus net production taxes. So net indirect taxes are all related to the product taxes, more related to the product taxes, not the production taxes. ठीक है, तो ये थोड़ा एक चेंज आया था मेथोडोलॉजी में. टू ऐड टू दैट द बेस ईयर गॉट चेंज्ड. बेसिक प्राइस प्लस नेट प्रोडक्ट टैक्सेस, फैक्टर कॉस्ट प्लस डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस. इसको थोड़ा रिफाइन कर दिया गया है इन सिस्टम टर्म्स कि व्हाट वी हैव मूव्ड अवे फ्रॉम फैक्टर कॉस्ट, वी आर कैलकुलेटिंग बेसिक प्राइस एंड नाउ वी आर एडिंग नेट इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस. वी हैव मूव्ड फ्रॉम द कैलकुलेशन हैज, देखो दो चीज होता है, एक व्हाट इज गेटिंग यूज्ड and what is the actual economics. The economics talks about factor cost and market price. It is the international word for economics, for national income accounting, irrespective of the कोई भी economy का बात करें. But India says because we internationally they calculate on the basic price. So basic price पे हमको add करना, ना कि factor cost पे add करना to arrive at the market price. Basic price. GVA is calculated, if you go and see that data, the chart, it is GVA at basic price. They won't come up with any data that is GVA at factor cost. Factor cost has been forgotten. Factor cost has been forgotten.
No, we don't use market price in the calculation.
We use market price. All the GDP that is getting calculated is the market price. It is at market price. Earlier it used to be at factor cost. We have moved, we have changed two things. One, we won't use factor cost, we'll use basic price, first thing. Another change happened that GDP will be calculated at market price and not factor cost. Because internationally also that is getting calculated at market price, not at factor cost. ठीक है? What? First one is to just say we are moving away from factor cost. The second one is how we are calculating our GDP.
And why have we moved away from factor cost?
Because this is the international standard that we need to include production taxes, net production taxes also. We were missing out to those. We were not including it. तो अभी हमको उसको include करना होगा. ठीक है ना, जो भी चीज फायदा का रहेगा तो वी ट्राई टू मूव टू दैट थिंग. गो एंड सी द डेटा. देयर इज अ डेटा, वो टेबल में देयर इज अ टेबल, पेज नंबर 13. ये फुल डेटा द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया कम्स अप विद दिस डेटा. So in the first line itself, GVA at basic price, page 13, there is no concept of GVA at market at factor cost. ठीक है? Now various aggregates of national income. So these are various measures or various forms of national income. If I say national income, there are various forms. So one of the form, it starts with GDP at market price. We try to calculate GDP at market price, and what is the GDP? It is the total final value of goods and services produced within an economy in an accounting year or in an accounting period. From there we calculate GDP at factor cost, minus कर दोगे तो factor cost आ जाएगा. These are simple basic mathematics, basic formula to say स्पेसिफिक नेशनल इनकम. क्या होता है ना, नेशनल इनकम के अंदर भी वी ट्राई टू से व्हाट शुड बी कैलकुलेट नेशनल इनकम, दैट इज एनएनपी एट एफसी, दैट इज नेट नेशनल प्रोडक्ट एट फैक्टर कॉस्ट. दिस इज द इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड. बट व्हाट वी से आवर जीडीपी एट मार्केट प्राइस इज व्हाट वी विल से नेशनल इनकम ऑफ इंडिया. वी आर चूजिंग दिस फॉर्म ऑफ नेशनल इनकम as अगर नेशनल इनकम पूछा जाए इंडिया का तो जीडीपी एट मार्केट प्राइस इज द नेशनल इनकम ऑफ इंडिया. ठीक है. All because there was an issue. The government of India were using lower matrix, so they try to align it with the international standards. US में भी market price पे ही निकालते हैं. ठीक है ना? Exactly. We used to calculate it at factor cost. They used to calculate it at market price.
So how did we compare at that time? Because the numbers would be very.
We were not developed enough. There was no comparison between India and developed world. All because why do they calculate at market price? Do you have any idea? Yeah,
Because taxes are also important.
very high. Taxes are very high in developed markets. You go and see the taxes in West Europe and those in US. It is roughly 30 to 40% of the net tax. Even in France, it is roughly 50%. So they do not try to उसको eliminate नहीं करते हैं. They try to include it. All because they have set the benchmark. So whatever they will say, that has to be followed. International accounting standards है. ठीक है ना? From there we get to know कि हमारा comparison कैसे होगा. These are comparative data. That does not give a signal about what is the condition. It is all the nominal GDP that gives. हाँ 2015 के बाद से. So this is the GDP at factor cost, market price and net indirect taxes. GDP or net product from gross to net depreciation. From market price to factor cost, it is the taxes which has to the net indirect taxes which has to be subtracted. Then NDP. ये basically we need to arrive net domestic product at factor cost. What should be the value? We are taking this reference. GDP at MP, we try to move it to that particular point. So, अगर FC पे जाना है MP माइनस से ये माइनस करेंगे, then gross to net depreciation माइनस करें. So these are not relevant to अब questions नहीं आते हैं. But क्या GDP and what is the national income? It is the GDP at market price.
So everywhere when factor cost will be in play, the taxes will be minus subtracted, no?
Factor price from market price to factor cost, taxes has to be subtracted. Net indirect taxes has to be subtracted. From gross to net, it is depreciation part and goes with the finance also. Gross से net पे जब भी जाते हैं ना, तो there is always amortization ये सब factor को minus करते तब net पे निकलता है वो. So वहाँ से finance से भी कुछ concepts लिया गया है. Then net national product. Now the concept of national product. So domestic to national, we need to add net factor income from abroad. So GDP minus depreciation plus net factor income from abroad. And this is the international, this is the national income actually, which is actually told as the national income in international standards.
Sir, that NFIA includes what parameters, like it includes grants?
No, I'm not saying grants.
No, sir, NFIA, that is?
NFIA is, see, there are two things. One is factor. Factor income does not include any grant. So it is all related to the economic activities which are being done by internationals abroad vis-a-vis foreign nationals in India. Whatever the earning of Indian nationals in abroad, we try to include it, and subtraction of whatever the payment we are giving to the foreigners who are working in India.
It also includes the interest payments that we are paying to the loans that we have taken from foreign banks or foreign governments.
Interest?
Interest on the loans that we have taken from the foreign governments or foreign entities. Net factor income.
Factor income from abroad?
Yes.
Interest earning?
Interest that we are paying.
Paying to abroad, then minus we have to subtract it. Subtract it.
Also, I think it also includes the grants that we are giving to foreign countries.
Foreign country to subtract it, but they will not include it. We will subtract it, but they will not include it. अपने economy में फिर they will not include because that is transfer payments for them. ठीक है ना? you are actually mixing two things. One is external factor and one is GDP and NDP. So try to be concise कि क्या हम देख रहे हैं. तीन चार चीज़ एक साथ मिक्स करोगे ना तो थोड़ा पैटर्न गड़बड़ाएगा वहाँ पे. Factor income में although income is one of the payments that we are also paying, interest payment or interest income that we are generating. Interest income में अगर if you are generating from outside then it is NFIA from abroad or paying to abroad अगर if you are paying. Now the concept of real GDP. It is known as GDP at constant price.
So again, the national income, we always said that the GDP at market price is the national income.
We see, if you see the data, national income of India, you go and see the chart. The 23rd and 24th. So the GDP value, the 13th value and the 23rd value, they are roughly same. So what we are saying, GDP का value national income को इस तरह से calculate करके, although it should be national income net national product at factor cost. Estimations. Exact value government also tries to extrapolate on the data, based on the data. So that is why there is also an error and omissions. एक बहुत बड़ा discrepancies होते हैं. Discrepancies if you see the value, it is 1% of the GDP. So 1% of the GDP is roughly 2 lakh crores. So these are certain discrepancies. So don't go deep into it. कि exact. It is not additions and subtractions. छोटे level पे we can do it, but not at the broader level.
National income of India will refer to what?
So national income as a whole would be referred to. But if someone says what is the national income of India, the GDP at market price can be included, all because the NFIA is not substantial for India, although it is negative for India. National income, GDP at market price is what government tracks. Why? Because the net factor income from abroad, it is very less.
So the UPSC it gives a question that how is the
If there is NNP at FC, tick that.
okay. And both options are the GDP at MP and NNP.
No, they won't give it. They won't give it. Then they'll give a benefit of doubt. Okay, they won't give it. ठीक है ना? And national income, national GNP is more relevant to US, not to India, because most of the incomes the foreigners are getting from abroad into US. ठीक है ना? So what is that real GDP? दोनों क्वेश्चन कभी नहीं आएगा, इसका टेंशन नहीं है, दोनों साथ में ऑप्शंस नहीं देंगे कभी भी. ठीक है ना? National income and all those things. So what is the use of real GDP?
To find the actual growth in the output that they produce, or the goods that they produce.
Volumes. Real GDP is all about volumes. Exactly, by keeping the prices constant. So what is value? It is price into quantity. What is value? It is price into quantity. Suppose value at 1 year or the base year and value at some another year. इसमें कुछ value changes आया. How can you be sure whether it is because of price or because of quantity? So we need to keep prices constant. So to gauge about the economic activity, real economic activity, all because things are getting produced in a bigger margin, so it is getting consumed more. So it gives a signal that the economy as a whole has increased. So it is more about real GDP is not generally used for country-wise comparison. It is all about India's or the country from one particular point to a next point. For a particular country, it is inflation adjusted. Why do we not use that part? Cross-country comparison में real GDP is not a better indicator. Why? For comparing US and India,
Inflation
No, if I say I need to compare India and US, which could be a better indicator, nominal GDP or a real GDP? Why?
Because the base year of the two countries will be different.
Exactly. One thing, it is very easy to find the current prices. It is very easy to find the current prices. So it is very easy to know the nominal GDP comparison. But for a country which has grown or not, for a particular country it is better to calculate real GDP. नहीं वो ये नहीं इतना क्रूड नहीं है कि एकदम ये करना है it is all if I say कि which is better US versus India, better to calculate nominal GDP because real GDP nominal GDP data is readily available. The current prices data are available. It is easy to compare things between one country and another country. But for real GDP, but if I say, if you need to know about the growth rate, which is a better indicator? Real. So if we say India has grown by 7.5% in the last 1 year, it is the real growth rate.
7.5% increase in the quantity of the good produced.
Increase in the economic capacity of India.
So when India has grown by 6 amount of percent, it refers to the real growth.
Real GDP growth.
जब दो देशों का growth rate compare करेंगे तो हम दोनों देशों की real और
नहीं there are two things that happens. जब दो देश का growth rate compare करते, it is only real. It is only real. No nominal comes into picture. Nominal is only taken for 2-3 things. One is comparison between two countries. Second is tax to GDP ratio. Tax to GDP ratio is always calculated over a nominal GDP, not the real GDP, and that is why it is said inflation is good for the government. Inflation, the government does not try to tame inflation as quickly as the monetary policy regulator does. So that is why there is always a tussle between the fiscal policy regulators, the government, and the monetary policy regulators. Monetary policy regulator wants to have price stability, so they try to increase interest rates. But the government says, I am having a better tax revenue, all because the prices of goods and services has gone up and it is calculated based on the cost. So I will be getting more tax revenue. इसी कारण से there is always a tussle. Nominal growth rate. But there is always a thing that एक और चीज बहुत अच्छा होता है. You can say per capita income looks better in nominal GDP. It looks better in nominal GDP. So if I say the per capita income of India has gone up to 2 lakh rupees per year, that is nominal. In real terms, it has only increased from 78,000 in 2012-13 to 98,000 currently. So roughly 20,000 rupees in 10 years. And that too all because the corporates that are growing. So in real terms, poor are getting poorer. क्योंकि upper end पे तो per capita income हमेशा it would show an anomaly. So the real wages have gone down. The real incomes have gone down. समझ में आया ये चीज़? Real income हमेशा कम हो रहा है. The prices are going at a faster, increasing at a faster rate. ठीक है? एक ये चीज़ और there's a concept of, I have this slide. So these are the data basically. देखो रियल टर्म्स में देखोगे तो क्या ही डेटा है 137, 147, 157 लाख करोड़. एंड सी द नॉमिनल डेटा. नॉमिनल डेटा it is 267, 247, and to add to that, there's a tax collection of roughly 29 lakh crores. So GDP at market price is roughly 296 or 297 lakh crores. It has touched 300 lakh crores in nominal terms. ठीक है? And that is why 3 लाख करोड़ अगर डिवाइड करोगे लगभग 1.5 अरब पॉपुलेशन से, it is roughly 2 lakh rupees. Rough estimation, 2 lakh rupees in nominal terms, not in real terms. ठीक है? Last, some of the few other concepts. The GDP deflator. What is the GDP deflator? In crude terms, what is said that the inflation rate is the GDP deflator. नहीं होता ऐसा. We'll see this in the inflation part. GDP deflator accounts for all the goods and services. The inflation only accounts for basket of goods and services. Is broader. At the same time, it is more inclined towards WPI basket. Most of the goods or the commodities are more inclined towards WPI in GDP deflator, not to the CPI. And that is why this year the GDP growth rate in real terms, it is roughly 8%, I would say, but in nominal terms it is only 9 to 9.5%. Why? This has been projected that in real terms the GDP would grow at 7.5, 7.6%, and in nominal terms it will be growing at lesser than 10%. Earlier it used to be 11, 12%, and that is why the tax to GDP ratio would go down, would move up. That would be not good for the economy. The GDP growth rates are at 7.5%, that has been projected, but the GDP nominal terms would only grow by 9%. All because the GDP deflator has more WPI indexed goods, and WPI is in the negative territory. WPI is in the negative territory. If 70 or 80% of the goods are from the WPI, so net GDP deflator के कारण क्या हो रहा है कि ज़्यादा nominal GDP grow नहीं कर रहा है. और जब nominal GDP is not growing at a very higher rate, then the tax calculation as a percentage of GDP would have to be revised. All because कि tax हमने ज़्यादा fiscal deficit project कर दिया, but the nominal GDP would not be growing at that rate. So that would mean we will be breaching those targets. So inflation in the economy is in the consumer price, not in the wholesale price. We had GDP in nominal terms a growth of 15 to 16% in 21 and 22, all because of higher WPI in those years. But this year 23-24 we are experiencing negative WPI, and because of that the GDP, what is GDP deflator? Nominal upon, this is the GDP deflator. So अगर ये GDP deflator ही कम हो जाएगा और इसके ऊपर दे जाएंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा? ये वैल्यू अपने आप कम नहीं दिखेगी. If this value is going down, it gives a signal कि this is also going down. The numerator is going down.
So WPI is lesser and CPI is going higher.
WPI is in the negative territory. Negative. And even if the CPI is higher, the net pull on GDP deflator is not very high.
But ideally CPI should not be very high.
CPI should not be very high, but also WPI should also not be in the negative territory, because WPI gives a signal कि what is it overproduction in the inventories बहुत बन चुके हैं. Producers are now thinking we do not have to produce more.
Producers don't have the incentive to grow.
So we can also also say that certain sector of the economy are making huge profit as compared to certain other sector?
How?
Because they are profiteering, because they have made huge profits and their inflation is not growing as compared to the final products.
But how can you relate it with
WPI, right?
WPI? They are not getting included in the service.
So it can also indicate that service sector is growing more.
More. Exactly.
Manufacturing is growing lesser.
Lesser. And that is why the manufacturing, although we have very high data this month, but in the next subsequent IIP का data फिर गिर जाएगा. This last quarter we had a very good IIP data, but in the next subsequent quarter we will have lower data. GDP deflator needs to be higher for India. क्या होता है, इंडिया का टैक्स बढ़ना है, but tax to GDP ratio should also increase, but fiscal deficit target should not breach those GDP. If GDP is not increasing at a faster rate, what would happen? The government has taken loans. That would mean कि the fiscal deficit as a percent of GDP is going high. It is breaching those targets. Or government needs to have sovereign rating. There is a sovereign rating that is dependent on fiscal deficit targets. What they project? 5.9% of the GDP. And that GDP is nominal GDP. If nominal GDP is not rising enough, they have taken loans. They need to take loans because they have certain expenditure that they cannot cut. So what would happen? Fiscal deficit as a proportion of GDP cannot be brought down, or the debt level cannot be brought down. That is happening. So the debt levels of India won't be going low in near terms. This is GDP and PPP. Although this is not a matrix that is internationally accepted, it only gives a signal about the, you can say, standards of living. It gives a signal about the standard of living. What could be the cost? WPI indexed goods means in GDP deflator, rather GDP deflator is all for all goods and, right, exactly. GDP deflator is for all goods and services, but in that GDP deflator, the weight of WPI is higher as compared to CPI. So if GDP deflator is not rising high, it gives a signal that WPI is also not rising high. Or otherwise, if WPI is not rising high, it gives a signal that GDP deflator won't be rising high. So nominal GDP won't be clocking those 10 and 11%. नहीं, nominal ज़्यादा होना चाहिए ना. Numerator should be higher. See, nominal GDP, we should not think कि nominal GDP बढ़ाने के लिए क्या करते हैं, prices को इतना high कर देते हैं. There's always a balance that goes. Initial years in India, what India wants? Higher nominal GDP. With time we can tame inflation, but जब prices of goods and services एक point पे पहुंच जाएगा ना, तो हमारा production capacity भी उतना बढ़ जाएगा उसको match करने के लिए. Initially we cannot afford to have 1 to 2% of inflation what is seen in developed economies, because it gives a signal कि incentives for producers not to produce higher, and we need to have higher production because we need to grow at a higher rate. But वो भी नहीं होना चाहिए कि 7-8% पे हो जाए, then consumption can also go down. So there's always a balance that has to be taken place. ये हमेशा होता है, ठीक है? So it talks about standards of living. So in terms of GDP, it is only in PPP. What is the rank of India? Third. It is roughly 14.5 trillion USD. 14.5 trillion USD. But why is it not a standard matrix? Why is it not a standard matrix? Because it is dependent upon a basket of goods and services. What they say, you create a basket and you try to compare prices in India vis-a-vis any other country. But is it the guarantee that those only goods and services would be consumed in that particular country? They would have a different goods and services ka basket hoga. That is that is why IMF or world, they have created certain goods. There are certain indicators वो अपना बना लेते हैं. That is why it is not standard. One goods, if it is getting produced consumed in India, it is no guarantee that that would be consumed in US.
So what is the main motive for this purchasing power?
To know about standards of living, standard of living, cost of living. That is the main idea. And two, also, there's also one motive, make sure labor output is rationalized. देखो क्या होता है, in US they have higher GDP, their minimum wage rates are higher. क्या इसका क्या मतलब है कि वो इंडिया से 4 गुना ज़्यादा काम कर लेते होंगे क्या? All because the contribution of labor is lower in India, it is getting not captured in an accurate manner. एक वर्कर वहाँ पे कार साफ करेगा, वो शायद हो सकता है 1000 रुपये महीने दिन का कमाएगा, और वही इंडिया में काम करेगा तो 200 रुपये दिन का कमाएगा. बट द वर्क वुड बी सेम. टू मेक कि ये एनॉमली ना हो, यू नीड टू हैव दैट स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग, उसको पैरिटी पिलाने के लिए. Either you increase it or you discount the other. So what we say, we try to keep a reference US का rate and we try to augment that value for India. समझ में है क्या चीज़ है?
So if the World Bank themselves have created a basket, then why is it not accepted internationally?
See, it is not getting accepted all because the same basket is not getting consumed in every country. Suppose in India, would you think of paying minimum wages for simple work that you can get it for free? That is all that you can get it for free. And if if World Bank says that we are including that thing, how can the data be generated in India? Because they are getting it for free. Either you will add that data, that means कि इंडिया का GDP तो अभी ही हो जाएगा, US को सरपास कर जाएगा. अभी US को सरपास कर जाएगा. To multiply it at 140 crores, you get the data. That is why it is not a standard matrix. And what advanced economy are saying, that we are charging more because we are giving more productive things, better quality. So there's always an anomaly. कुछ सामान अगर आप suppose you are a North Indian, you will have a थाली which will include rice and wheat, something like that. दूसरे जगह के लोग उसको नहीं इंक्लूड करते होंगे. वुड यू इंक्लूड नारियल पानी इन योर? इंडिया में भी अगर नारियल पानी इंडिकेटर फॉर इंडिया, केरला एंड फॉर से इसका नॉर्थ इंडिया का हो, वो इंक्लूड कर लेगा. बट वुड यू इंक्लूड इट? आइदर यू क्रिएट ऑल गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज एज अ बास्केट, दैट इज अ डिफिकल्ट एक्सरसाइज. सो दैट इज वाई को इस तरह से काउंट करते हैं हम, और दैट इज वाई इट इज नॉट अ वेरी गुड इंडिकेटर टू कंपेयर इकोनॉमीज. जब ऑल गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज करना ही है, गो टू द जीडीपी एट नॉमिनल प्राइस. नॉमिनल जीडीपी डेटा काउंट करो एंड सी द डेटा. एंड सी ये क्या है ना, इट्स ऑल अबाउट द हेजेमनी ऑफ वेस्ट. दे वांट टू एंश्योर कि वी आर द बॉस, एंड दे ट्राई टू डिस्कार्ड और डिस्काउंट द लेबर इंटेंसिव वर्क in favor of capital intensive work. And they say whatever we are doing a more productive thing by discounting labor. इसलिए वहाँ पे prices anomaly होते हैं. तो इसलिए GDP को purchasing, the moment India, suppose India grows at a higher rate and there is an order कि South cooperation and the emerging market has a new norms of calculating GDP, तो हो सकता है ऐसा हो जाए कि इसको count करना start कर दे. But up till now it is not standardized. Now the methods of GDP calculation or the calculation methodologies, one is the expenditure method, another one is income method, and it is value added method. So value added method is all related to the producer point of view. Expenditure method is all in economics, it is known as aggregate demand. In economy we say it as expenditure method. In economics it is all related to the aggregate demand in the economy. So, and the third is factor income method or the income method. So what is output method? Output method और वैल्यू एडेड मेथड
all sectors are the final.
तो ग्रॉस वैल्यू एडेड all sectors, that is calculated as GDP at basic price. To add to that, we add net indirect taxes, we get GDP at market price. You have the sheets, you can see that in the data itself. GDP at basic price, the last part, it is all comprehensive pura data. The 13th page. First 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay?
So GDP refers to GDP at market price only.
Exactly. Why would government lose out on that tax part if it is international standard? Okay? It is more reflective of the sectors of the economy which are performing. उससे पता एक एक सेक्टर्स का कैसा कैसा कंट्रीब्यूशन है. बट द अदर वन इज इनकम मेथड. It is all related to the factor income, no transfer incomes. So it is rent on land / fixed assets. It is the rent on fixed assets. Then interest on capital. Wages on labor, profits on enterprise. So
Interest on capital includes this interest on capital includes every asset that
no, the capital that has been given to the enterprise to start the business or to run the business. Any money that is given to the enterprise to run the business, that is known as capital. That money can be used to buy assets, that money can be used to pay salaries, but under that capital part it would be included as a part of capital.
So the interest that is on capital, it signifies what? The interest when we say the interest.
Which it signifies a liability for the company to the, you can say, the person who has given, ठीक है, to the lender, ठीक है ना. And another way of classifying is because wages is a term that is not reflective of every aspect of the payment that is given to the labor. So that is why they say compensation of employees. क्या होता है ना in informal system. So what is the difference between wages and salaries?
Salary includes PF and other
Salary is only monetary or wage can also include payment in kind.
Exactly. Wages is more direct payment. Wages are more direct payment. So rather than using wages, we say compensation of employees, and that includes wages, any social security benefits or any in-kind benefits. Suppose you get any bonus or any incentive like any free tickets, that all because you have performed well, that becomes a part of your compensation, but that cannot be included as a part of your wage. So, in-kind benefits, in-kind that cannot be given as a cash. ठीक है ना? So that is why it is known as compensation of employees. Then another term is operating surplus. ये सब terms वो दे देते हैं, वैसे अब तो नहीं आता है. All because this GDP वाला part हो जाता है, then it becomes easier to go along. Operating surplus, what they say, apart from wages, everything is operating surpluses. The interest, the profits and the rent, because those things are not directly related to the operating part of any enterprise. These are the surpluses. तो इसलिए एक वर्ड कह देते compensation of employee, कह देते operating surpluses. इस तरह से भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर देते चीज़ों को. बाकी तीन, बिकॉज दे आर नॉट डायरेक्टली वेज. क्या होता है ना, ये एक अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स है. वेज जनरेट इन अ कंपनी और इन एनी एंटरप्राइज देयर आर टू थिंग्स. वन इज ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट होता है एक, जिसमें बेसिकली जो शॉप फ्लोर पे काम कर रहे हैं, जो डायरेक्टली लेबर काम कर रहा है, उनको काउंट करते हैं. और एक होता है income statements. Apart from those who are directly involved in any activity, there are indirect workers also like managers. So in a system, in accounts, salaries are all related to the indirect income or indirect payments. Salary of manager, salary of supervisor, salary of HR person, जो भी होते, they are not directly into production of goods and services. And wages are all directly to the workers who are directly producing those goods and services. स्विगी का जो डिलीवरी पार्टनर उसको वेज कहेंगे, लेकिन जो सॉफ्टवेयर पर बैठ के काम कर रहा है ना, वो सैलरी वाला पार्ट हो जाएगा. ठीक है ना, क्योंकि डायरेक्ट ही इज नॉट डायरेक्टली इनटू द ऑपरेशनल एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द कंपनी. किसी के लिए भी इस तरह से सोचना है, लेकिन दैट इज व्हाई वी हैव डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड थिंग्स. ठीक है. हाँ, दिस इज अनदर टर्म, मिक्स्ड इनकम ऑफ सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट. ऑल बिकॉज आगे पढ़ेंगे, इन इंडिया देर आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ लेबर, सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड एंड हायर्ड. Hired means who is working, an employee, working for an employer, and one is self-employed. Self-employed is not getting any salary, but he is also contributing, so there is always an imputed cost. ये imputed cost बहुत famous है because of MSP. Imputed cost, all because they are not getting any salary does not mean they are not accruing, they do not become a part, or they should not get anything in return. So that is why it comes under a part of mixed income of self-employed. It is very tough for all those professionals, for all those who are not working under any other entity. So उनकी income को हम side कर देते हैं, mixed income of self-employment.
How do we calculate it?
Those who are actually वेज रेट पे हम कैलकुलेट करते हैं, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द स्किल्स दैट दे आर हैविंग. Actually, so don't go into the methodologies. They have all those standards. They have all those normalizing factors. कभी आपने वो पे किया है, होल्डिंग म्युनिसिपल रेंट्स पे किया है? In municipal rents, a building has to be taxed by the municipal authorities. So they come up with different things कि ratio कितना आपका floor area कितना है, whether it is rented or self-occupied. Self-occupied where they have a normalizing factor like 1. If it is rented, they'll add another thing. If it is for commercial usage, तो उनके पास एक methodologies है. In the same manner for statisticians, they have methodology कि अगर अच्छा ये बीड़ी सिगरेट वाले कंपनी में काम करता है या सॉफ्टवेयर वाला काम करता है, सॉफ्टवेयर का अलग उनका रेट चलेगा. Based on the skill sets, they have minimum wage rates. उस हिसाब से वो they try to calculate the imputed cost also.
So like if the labor is self-employed, that means not paying any wage to other people in that sense.
If the person is running a company, then he is paying to the salaries. That becomes wage for the employees. But what he is getting?
So he can also pay a certain salary to himself, or in that sense, we can also say that the profit that enterprise is earning, that goes to him.
That is a different thing now. As a shareholder, he is getting the salaries or the dividends, but he is also contributing to the business activity, na?
The personal reward which he should get.
He should get.
But isn't that including the profit that the enterprise will earn?
Why? Because enterprise, what is getting debited, what remains after that becomes a part of profit. If the person, he has dual role as an investor, as a person who is working in the company. As an investor, even if Mukesh Ambani says that he is taking rupee 1 salary, it becomes a news. Mukesh Ambani has foregone salaries for the. But in GDP calculation, his salaries would be calculated as mixed income of self-employment. ठीक है ना?
इंडिया का एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में ये सारा जो फैक्टर इनकम है फार्मर्स के लिए मिक्स हो गए.
Self, exactly. If the farmer is working as worker on the field itself, himself, then mixed income for the self-employed हो जाएगा वहाँ पे. If he is hiring workers, then he has to pay salary, wages. So इसलिए you will have this data in the employment part. कैसे differentiate करते हैं वो पूरी चीज़ को.
So there is a contradiction that if a farmer hires 2% for doing a task, and if he does it by himself, then the imputed cost may go higher.
But if suppose he is hiring 2 workers, and he can do it by himself, then the imputed cost would be
Higher.
how?
Because he's, what you can say, he's doing certain tasks.
He has removed those workers. If he has removed those workers, then whatever the work he is doing, that would be part of imputed cost. अगर उसने, it is all about the cash flow, whether actual money has flown out of the system or not. If actual money has flown in terms of the wages, then wage count करेंगे. If actual money has not flown, it is all the accrual. It's more like finance and account. There's one thing, it's actual cash flow or notional cash flow. Notional में what we think that had that farmer or had that businessman hired that worker, he would have to pay that much amount. So that becomes a part of imputed cost. ठीक है ना? So वो C2 and A2 and FL, A2 and FL have this imputed cost thing. C2 they are asking for something altogether different thing. Rent on the land, the opportunity cost factors of the land also. Apart from that, to add to that, 50% off. So what they are saying, that is an anomaly. What you are saying that land, if I could have used that land for some another purposes, so give me that money first. To add to that, I am also producing, so give me profits on that. So it's in economics, that is null and void, that is double counting. If this land, if the owner comes and says I want to use it for renting purpose also, and ask the central business area of the land can have any value, that is very difficult to calculate. So you calculate any one thing. So इसलिए that is a absurd thing why they are asking for this. Now the questions, there are many questions. You don't have the questions. Expenditure method is left actually. Expenditure method is left. And that is one of the most important. Aggregate demand or GDP. This is a concept like what? To increase GDP, you need to increase the demand in the economy from various sectors of economy. It can come from consumption. It can come from investments. It can come from government, or it can come from और इसलिए 4 मॉडल्स जो स्टार्टिंग में था फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन में द सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी दैट कम्स इनटू पिक्चर. दिस इज व्हाट वी से प्राइवेट फाइनल कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर or in normal terms C, consumption. So what is getting total demand, some portion of it is through the consumption in the economy, and that forms the bigger chunk. Roughly 59 to 60% of the GDP is private final consumption expenditure. as a whole the citizens or the residents of the economy are consuming. That becomes a part of private final consumption expenditure. Corporations are
Also included in the
anything that is getting consumed, the final good. I had told you that thing, raw material, inventory or the work in progress and the final goods. Whatever is the final goods that is getting consumed, it comes under the part of private final consumption expenditure.
The government also consumes, but that will not be in the private, right?
No, that will be an investment.
Government.
Government.
Investment are two, is a different thing.
Sir, ये digital board final good या intermediate good?
For this is a capital good. For this institution, this is an intermediate good. For this institution, it is a capital good. For this knowledge that is having, this is an intermediate good. For what you are having a session, it is an intermediate good. All because the use of this good is generating certain things, a knowledge. So it is up to the use. कहाँ पे आप cut off check कर रहे हो? It is private final consumption expenditure. All the citizens or all the residents, I should say.
Barring the government.
Barring the
Government is not in.
no, not the government part, not the government part, not the government part. That becomes a part of private final consumption expenditure. Then comes the capital formation part. Or investment in the economy. But those investments should be what does that mean? मतलब पैसा लेके स्टॉक मार्केट में लगा दिया, that does not become a part of I or capital formation.
So technology is purchase of certain technology.
Technology is investment. I am saying financial investments को नहीं count करेंगे. Why? Why do we not calculate financial investment in fixed capital formation?
No, it is going from just one column to the other column.
Exactly.
So double count.
That double to avoid double count. What is financial investment? You are paying to some another entity to use that money to for another. Either it would increase fixed capital or government अगर वो पैसा लेती है bonds के through, they'll try to finance. It is just to avoid double counting. तो financial investments को exclude करते हैं. It is not getting excluded in the GDP part, but it is getting excluded in the I part. It is not included in this. तो अगर bonds खरीदते हैं या share markets में खरीदते हैं या किसी के shares खरीदते हैं, that is not included in the I part. कहाँ होता है? या तो वो खुद ही कैलकुलेट कर लेंगे अंदर में इसके, जब हमने पैसा दिया वो क्या चीज़ क्रिएट किया उन्होंने, या तो कंपनी ने वो पैसा रेज किया किस चीज़ के लिए यूज़ किया, या तो गवर्नमेंट ने फिजिकल डेफिसिट के लिए, तो गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर. चौथा तो कुछ जगह है नहीं. चौथा इट कुड बी ब्लैक मार्केट दैट गोज आउट ऑफ द इकोनॉमी or the government. If you go and buy those bonds, government bonds, what are you doing? You are basically financing those government expenditure. Government has raised money through issuing of bond and the bond is getting bought. Basically you are financing government expenditure. So that to avoid double counting, financial investments are excluded. समझ में आया? पैसा लेके या तो फैक्ट्री को दोगे या तो कंपनी में लगाओगे. अगर आप बैंक को भी देते हो, you say I am putting in, the bank would give that money as a loan to some other business and they will try to increase capital formation. तो एक ही पैसा से चार जगह डबल काउंटिंग नहीं होना चाहिए ना. ठीक है. Then it is government final consumption expenditure and it includes final consumption expenditure. ठीक है ना. सैलरीज वैलरीज ये सब वाला पार्ट में वो पैसा लेकर के उन्होंने रोड ब्रिजेस बनाए होंगे, दैट बिकम्स अ पार्ट ऑफ आई, नॉट कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर. पेंशन, सैलरीज, ऑल दोस कंजम्पशन बेस्ड एक्सपेंडिचर. ठीक है ना. वो अगर उसने कुछ छोटा मोटा वो सब भी खरीदा होगा, छोटा मोटा इन्वेंट्रीज भी खरीदा, दैट बिकम्स अ फाइनल कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर. बट द मनी द गवर्नमेंट रेजेस फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट इन द इकोनॉमी वो आई में चला जाएगा फिर. ठीक है ना. Then the last is external sector, the net exports. basically this is negative for India. This is irrelevant for India's GDP. It is always negative. So this is the data. So consumption expenditure as a proportion of GDP is going down. So if a trend comes, ऐसे तो इतना close trend आना नहीं है. What we are witnessing, the investment rate is picking up. Actually, we had an investment. The I upon GDP is the investment rate in the economy. कभी कभी वर्ड आता है ना इन्वेस्टमेंट रेट कितना गवर्नमेंट वर्ल्ड इंडिया का, दैट यूज्ड टू बी 37 to 38%. It went down to 25%. And if it goes down, then it is not a good signal, all because if investments are not there, then next round of consumption won't happen. What is consumption? It is based on the investment that is done in previous years. If investment rates are going down, that means the consumption is bound to go down in some future time. So that is why we need to pick this up, make sure that this is higher, and that is why this I is dependent upon a term known as savings rate. So it is said that investment rate is roughly equal to savings rate. What is getting invested? The surplus amount, what is getting saved. But there is an issue, higher saving is also detrimental for the economy because it leads to lower C. So that is why the economy is all about balancing. कुछ भी ज़्यादा कर दोगे दूसरे जगह पे प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगा. If higher is the savings rate, would go down because income is savings plus consumption. कम हो जाएगा. But what we need to increase efficiency. We need to increase. If the efficiency increases, that gives a signal that from lower investment rates also we can produce higher. And that ratio is actually known as incremental capital output ratio. ICOR. Either we need to have higher investment rate or we need to have lower incremental capital output ratio. Okay. Fresh कागज fresh. यहाँ पे it is easier. That is why this is a very good thing to have the data at the same time, along with the. It is very easy to.
More thing, sir. Sir, for GDP, sir, why the number is so high, 16.1? The previous year change. Current price.
Nominal. लास्ट ईयर का डेटा अच्छा आया था बिकॉज WPI वेर हायर. ठीक है ना. ठीक है. तो व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इन्वेस्टमेंट रेट इज इक्वल टू सेविंग्स. एक्चुअली इट इज नॉट इक्वल, थोड़ा सा होता है, इट इज रफली इक्वल, ऑलमोस्ट इक्वल टू सेविंग्स. सो इफ आई से आई नीड टू क्लॉक हायर ग्रोथ रेट, then I needs to increase, investment rate needs to increase. But at the same time, if we want more consumption also, बना रहे investment कर रहे लेकिन consume ही नहीं हो रहा है, that would mean deflation in the economy. More supply than demand, deflation in the economy. So what we are saying, rather than higher investment rate, we need to reduce incremental capital output ratio. From one unit addition of capital, how much unit of additional output can be generated? If more additional output can be generated, that gives a signal of efficient economic system. So if we try to reduce this incremental capital outputs, capital needed by output generated. So if this ratio gets reduced, This means more capital, more output is getting generated from less capital. That gives a signal about efficient economic system, and that can only come from the skill sets, the human capital. Mechanization has also a limit. See, देखो एक चीज़ होता है कि हमने output generate कर दिया. The main idea is whether that is translating into any visible standards of living भी तो increase होना चाहिए. Purchasing power is getting generated. अगर हमने सब जगह out mechanization कर दिया, what would happen? That the firms would be generating profits, but those profits won't be getting distributed in terms of salaries. So what would happen? In future, in next round, the consumption may go down. It is bound to go down because they don't have the capacity to purchase things. So consumption expenditure would go down. तो हमारा investment
technology can also be related to mechanization.
Exactly, technology, the skill sets. It is being said that in 8 hours working time, Chinese can work twice. Then they can produce twice that of India. Twice or something like 2.5 times. That is the productivity in man hours. In 1 hour, how much is the output that is getting generated? So the productivity of Chinese worker is higher vis-a-vis Indian worker. What is getting favored for Indian worker is the lower labor cost. The labor costs are very low as compared to China. It is roughly 2 or 3 times lower, 1/3 of Chinese worker. So that is why firms are shifting to India, all because not India has better climate, all because the labor costs are, तो उनके पास margins बढ़ जा रहे हैं. That is the only idea. ठीक है ना? तो ये इस तरह से चलता है. Incremental capital output ratio, we need to reduce it. If we do not have sufficient savings rate, then we depend on FIIs and FDIs. If investment rates are higher, but savings rate are not higher, that gives a signal that we are dependent upon foreign funds to fund the investment, and that is happening in Indian economy. Our investment rates needs to increase, but our savings rate are not increasing. Why? Because the per capita income is not rising faster, or the disposable income is not rising faster. So what is happening? We are not generating surpluses. पैसा इतना बचा ही नहीं जो surplus generate कर दे. Savings भी down ही है, all because the real wages have gone down. I told you 72,000 to 98,000 in 10 years. In terms of per capita income, I exclude that corporate, higher corporates का जो contribution होगा तो lower level पे तो rates पक्का down गया. Real wages, हाँ?
80 to 85 it will be in the market.
मेरे को तो negative हो गया. Corporate profits have zoomed higher. Go and see the corporate contribution. Tata and Reliance, the output, the profitability. अगर उसको minus कर दोगे तो what is the wages that is getting distributed? तो savings rate down चला जाएगा. So we are more dependent upon foreign capital, and that is why we are having more connectivity with बाहर के foreign के आओ भाई इंडिया में invest करो. See, we are seeing a higher cycle. Consumptions can only pick when our demography would stabilize. क्या होता है? There is a process in demography. Demography का एक concept होता है. India's median age is roughly 29 years. It is said that when the median age crosses 35 years, then there is a discretionary consumption boom that happens. क्या होता है कि अभी इकोनॉमी में ना यंग पॉपुलेशन बहुत है, द सैलरीज आर लोअर, द सेविंग्स रेट आर लोअर. द मोमेंट दैट थिंग गोज हायर, दैट गिव्स अ सिग्नल दैट स्टेबल इनकम इज गेटिंग जनरेटेड, बिकॉज कि उतना दिन तक वो काम करेंगे तो उनके पास सब्सटैंशियल सेविंग्स होगा, एंड दैट वुड इंक्रीज कंजम्पशन बूम. बट देयर इज ऑल्सो अ कैच. We need to make sure कि GDP also goes higher and the standard of living should go higher. So that is why we are more into increasing the per capita income. That is the idea. Per capita income ज़्यादा rise करना चाहिए. So these are the questions. So last opportunity, huh? What happened? Questions नहीं है. Okay. क्या हुआ?
इसी में करते हैं।
हाँ इसी में कर लेते हैं, वही तो कर रहा हूँ मैं भी तो ये सोचा था कि इसी में कर लेते हैं, सब चीज़ मिलना नहीं है. SAT, you will have that SAT part in you. If the commodity is provided free to the public by the government, so what is the opportunity cost? What is the meaning of opportunity cost? Suppose you are given two options and you choose one, the cost of losing out on two, that becomes opportunity cost. So if any goods is provided by the government to the public for free, then basically the opportunity cost is getting transferred from public to tax paying public. Nothing is free, there is no free lunch. फ्री कुछ नहीं होता जिंदगी, बस होता है कि वेयर द व्हाट इज द अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट, वेदर इफ द गवर्नमेंट से वी आर बियरिंग द अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट, बट हु इज द रियल पर्सन? इट इज द टैक्स पेइंग पीपल हु आर बियरिंग. अगर गवर्नमेंट ने कुछ फ्री में दे दिया तो क्या हुआ? बेसिकली हु इज फंडिंग इट? इट इज टैक्स पेइंग पीपल हु आर. तो अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट इज गेटिंग शिफ्टेड, क्योंकि उस पैसे को गवर्नमेंट ने पब्लिक गिव टू गवर्नमेंट फॉर बेटर यूज, एंड द गवर्नमेंट इज प्रोवाइडेड सर्टेन थिंग्स फॉर फ्री. तो वो पैसा जो था पब्लिक का, वो गवर्नमेंट का जो ट्रांसफ़र था ना, गवर्नमेंट ने पब्लिक के पैसे को ट्रांसफ़र किया. वो पैसा कहीं फ्री की जगह दूसरी जगह लगा कि हो सकता है इन्वेस्टमेंट करके उसमें ब्रिजेस बनाते. तो वो शिफ्ट क्या हुआ? गवर्नमेंट ने शिफ्ट किया, ठीक है ना, टैक्स पेइंग पब्लिक पे शिफ्ट हो गया. Two equal options. Suppose you are ₹100 with you. You eat. Suppose there are two things. You invest the money, or you buy things. If you chose this one, the return that could have been generated through this, that is the opportunity cost. द गवर्नमेंट शिफ्ट कैसे हुआ? शिफ्ट नहीं हो गया, वो पैसा टैक्स पेइंग पब्लिक का अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट पे शिफ्ट हुआ. जीरो तो नहीं होने वाला अपॉर्चुनिटी, कभी भी इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम में अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट जीरो होगा ही नहीं, ठीक है ना. दूर कैसे चली जाएगी? दूर कैसे चली जाएगी? हाँ, बट टैक्स पेइंग जरूरी थोड़ी है. हाँ,
सबको मिल रहा है
तो
टैक्स पेइंग पब्लिक से दूर जा रहा है ना, कि उनका पैसा सबको.
तो आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द बेनिफिट, नॉट द कॉस्ट. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द कॉस्ट. वो पैसा जो फ्री में, अगर इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द पार्क, फ्री में जो पार्क हुआ, यूज किया, उस पे जो कॉस्ट लगा, वो कॉस्ट कहाँ पे शिफ्ट हुआ? कॉस्ट किस पे शिफ्ट किया? जिसने पैसा टैक्स दिया होगा उसको मेंटेन करने के लिए. आई एम नॉट सेइंग द बेनिफिट पार्ट, द कॉस्ट पार्ट. यू आर थिंकिंग अबाउट द बेनिफिट पार्ट, ठीक है ना. अगर वो टैक्स पेइंग पब्लिक उसे यूज नहीं करेगी तो तुम्हें डबल प्रॉब्लम आने वाली है. So these are some of the questions. Increase in absolute and per capita real GNP do not connect a higher level of economic development if. Why? Because the wealth distribution is not even. अगर हायर GDP, GNP, per capita सब चीज़ हो गया, still poverty and वो है, तो इसका मतलब कि inclusive development distribution हुआ ही नहीं है. And that is why corporate profits are higher, but still the majority of the people are poor, are not affording things. Got it? ठीक है. Then economic growth is usually coupled with inflation, obviously inflation. So that is why there is always a dilemma between growth versus inflation. Balance between a monetary policy or fiscal policy needs to work in tandem. कभी कभी इसलिए problems होते हैं इनके बीच में. This is a very simple question. अब क्या होता है ना, इस पे डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चंस मेनली उसमें आते हैं. अभी यू विल गेट दैट थिंग इन द फाइनेंशियल मार्केट एंड द वो RBI वाला जितना पूरा मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी, देयर दे हैव डिफरेंट क्वेश्चंस. लास्ट ईयर ओनली दे आस्क्ड 2 क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम दैट. फाइनेंशियल मार्केट बीटा दे आस्क्ड, और एक वो इसका सेंट्रल बैंक का इंटरेस्ट रेट रेज करने का असर्शन रीजन वाला क्वेश्चन, दे आस्क्ड दैट क्वेश्चन. सो दिस ऑल द आंसर्स आर एक्चुअली करेक्ट. फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन यू आस्क, दीज आर सिंपल टर्म्स. वो यू नीड टू ट्राई दीज थिंग्स कि वो कहीं ना कहीं कभी कभी ना यू नीड टू टेक द रिस्क. डायरेक्ट आंसर, डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चंस कभी नहीं आने वाले हैं. Consider the following situation. The answer is given B, but what could be the 2 correct options? Exactly. Got it. National income is a broader concept than gross domestic product. And the statement national income accounting includes the concept of nationality, GDP calculation based on territoriality. It's a broader concept. हाँ, ये reason है. That is why it is broader. Nationality. So that is why it's, don't go deep into residency and nationality. Residency, it is based on residency. National income is based on residency. And residency is defined upon the tax, where you are paying your taxes. In crude terms, basically where your economic interest lies. If it lies, what is the economic interest? Whether you are from where you are generating most of your income, and from where basically you are spending your money. And in crude manner you can say where you are paying your taxes. If you are paying taxes in India, then that becomes your residency. NRI are non-resident Indians, all because they are not paying taxes to India. ठीक है ना? So remittances का पार्ट आ जाता है फिर उनका. NRI इनकम वैसे GDP के हिसाब से नहीं काउंट करते उसमें, NDP में. So this question. Second is the correct answer. How? Why is not correct? Huh? It does not include financial estate investment. But I told you. Huh? So then it should be correct then.
It does not include, नहीं है ना, it करता है.
कैसे include करता है? I told you that it is not included in the I part. But it is talking about the whole part. Had it been the investment part, then it would have been, ये correct हो जाता. But it is talking about कहीं ना कहीं तो count कर ही रहा होगा, कहीं ना कहीं तो ले रहा होगा. If I tell you कि it does not include financial investment, yeah, the gross fixed capital formation does not include financial investment by the residents, then it is a correct statement. But it is talking about the broader consumption expenditure. I में include नहीं करता है, कहीं ना कहीं तो include करेगा. It depends on the कहाँ it is getting adjusted. ऐसा नहीं है वी आर इंश्योरिंग कि डबल काउंटिंग ना हो, काउंटिंग ही ना हो, ये थोड़ी जाने की वी आर ट्राइंग टू एक्सक्लूड इट. एक्सक्लूड कर देंगे तो पूरा ही सिस्टम कोलैप्स कर जाएगा. बैंकिंग सिस्टम गोज आउट ऑफ दिस. समझ में आया? कहीं ना एक बार तो काउंट हो गया ना. इट इज सेइंग कि कहीं भी नहीं काउंट करता है. एंड थर्ड इज इट डज नॉट इंक्लूड इनकम ऑन डिपॉजिट्स. नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता है. इंटरेस्ट इनकम is a part of, I told you, operating surpluses में. Interest income is a part of it. Interests and royalties. What you are getting your money on the capital, that capital can be financed by any person also.
So 2 will come under C, no? Financial. Output method does not.
Output method does not talk about C or I or G.
In case it will come under C or anything.
No, don't compare apple to oranges. Output method includes inventory. But if you try to calculate output method to expenditure method, दोनों absurd comparisons हो जाएंगी फिर. ठीक है ना? Here we are talking about जो work in progress या जो भी inventory बचता है ना, वो are they getting calculated or not? They are getting calculated. जब अकाउंटिंग होता है देयर इज अ टर्म नोन एज ओपनिंग स्टॉक एंड क्लोजिंग स्टॉक एंड चेंज इन स्टॉक इज द आइडिया. सो द चेंज इन स्टॉक गेट्स एडेड टू द आउटपुट. इन्वेंट्री इस तरह से होता है. ओपनिंग डे 1 में इतना रहा, एंड ऑफ फिजिकल ईयर और द अकाउंटिंग पीरियड इतना रहा. यू सबट्रैक्ट इट टू नो द चेंज इन इन्वेंट्री. इफ इट इज पॉजिटिव यू कैलकुलेट इट एट द मार्केट प्राइस. इट इज thought as if it has been sold to the market. नहीं तो वो तो इन्वेंट्री कभी काउंट ही नहीं होगा. मान लो फैक्ट्री में बन के रह गया, इट हैज़ नॉट रीच्ड द मार्केट. बट तो फिर तो कंजम्पशन मेथड में, आउटपुट मेथड में कुछ दिखाएगा, इनकम मेथड पे कुछ दिखाएगा, एक्सपेंडिचर मेथड पे कुछ दिखाएगा. सो टू एंश्योर दैट थिंग्स गेट्स कैलकुलेटेड वी हैव चेंज इन स्टॉक, ओपनिंग स्टॉक एंड क्लोजिंग स्टॉक, एंड द डिफरेंस ऑफ इट इज गेटिंग कैलकुलेटेड. पैसा लग जाएगा, वो पैसा आगे मार्केट में इनकम जनरेट ही नहीं हो गया, कहाँ पैसा फिर? द इन्वेंट्री पार्ट. रिगार्डिंग जीडीपी एंड जीवीए, नेक्स्ट क्लास इतनी लंबी नहीं होगी. दिस वाज द बिगेस्ट क्लास इन टर्म्स ऑफ द कॉन्सेप्ट्स. टेक दिस. Why is not B correct? हाँ, एग्जैक्टली बोथ में नहीं काउंट होता. ये बस एक टर्म है, जीडीपी हो या जीवीए हो, इंटरमीडिएट गुड्स तो नहीं काउंट होता. डबल काउंटिंग टू अवॉइड डबल काउंटिंग. Increment. Lower is the ICOR, the economy. Better is the chance of using that capital in a productive manner. ठीक है ना? So that is why it is being said the Skill India mission would lead to lower ICOR. Lower ICOR. Skill India mission अगर अच्छे successful होता है, so we will be having higher productivity, and higher productivity would translate into lower ICOR. Even if we have lower investment rates, we'll have higher GDP growth rate. ठीक है ना? ये सब इजी क्वेश्चन है, प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन या IIPMTs और बहुत से मिक्स करके लिए गए और कुछ पुराने क्वेश्चंस को मिक्स किए हैं. सो इन दैट पार्ट एक्सटर्नल सेक्टर, इन दैट BOP पार्ट, इन दैट पार्ट बैंकिंग, यू विल हैव मेनी क्वेश्चंस. उस पर तो सबसे ज़्यादा क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. सो लग्जरी गुड्स हैव नेगेटिव इनकम इलास्टिसिटी ऑफ डिमांड. Giffen goods have positive price elasticity of demand.
So price elasticity of demand and income elasticity.
Exactly. Change in quantity demanded in percentage terms upon change in price of the goods, that is price elasticity of demand. Of demand, same thing upon change in income, both in percentage terms. Upon change in income. Income elasticity of demand.
Negative income elasticity, the income will be lesser.
No,
Higher, sorry.
it is not talking about higher or lower. Negative means if the increase in income is increasing, whether goods demand is getting decreased or not. That gives a negative sign. यहाँ नेगेटिव कब होगा? जब या तो ये ऊपर नेगेटिव हो जाए या तो नीचे वाला कुछ नेगेटिव हो जाए. अगर दोनों नेगेटिव हो जाए या दोनों पॉजिटिव हो जाए, that becomes positive. So what is negative income elasticity of demand? So as income rises, the demand of the goods reduces. That is a classic case for inferior goods पे होता है. हाँ?
The demand also increases, right? So first one, if we increase the price, the demand also increases in luxury.
But it is talking about
The first is incorrect and second is correct.
luxury goods have negative income elasticity of demand. That is an incorrect statement. Given goods have positive price elasticity. This is a correct statement. ठीक है ना? जैसे उसका प्राइस बढ़ता है उसका डिमांड, दैट इज द क्लासिक केस ऑफ peculiar केस ऑफ गिवन गुड्स, मोस्टली एसेंशियल गुड्स, एंड दैट इज सीन इन द यू कैन से स्टॉक आउट सिचुएशन जब होता है ना, तभी ऐसा दिखता है.
सर गिफ्ट गुड्स में पॉजिटिव इलास्टिसिटी
ऑफ डिमांड. Elasticity needs to be calculated over income or demand. On demand it is positive, all because the price increases, demand increases.
और डेवलपमेंट गुड में पॉजिटिव इनकम इलास्टिसिटी.
Income elasticity, exactly. Income elasticity. This, when net factor income from abroad is positive, this has been given. Then what is necessarily correct? Which is GNP is greater than GDP. ठीक है? You? B is correct. B is correct. Whether A is correct or not. It is a part of compensation of employee. It is a part of factor income. Bonus कभी भी मिलता है, that is based on incentive, performance. Transfer नहीं है वो, factor income है वो. That is not wage but part of compensation. That cannot be wage. Wage is something that you are getting just for in return of the work that you are doing. But to add to that the performance that you have given, based on that you get the bonus, and but still it is a part of factor income. नहीं तो सबको थोड़ी मिल रहा है बोनस. ठीक है ना? अगर कोई नॉन फैक्टर इनकम रहता है, that is why this is incorrect and this is correct statement. Gini coefficient. What is Gini coefficient? So what is, if one is 1 means inequality or equality? So what does that signify?
Only one person has all the wealth.
Exactly. Only one person. It shows that line of best fit में वो ये पूरा इस पॉइंट पे आके एक के पास जो 100th परसेंटाइल पे जो होगा ना, उसी के पास पूरा इनकम आ गया. पूरा इनकम आ गया, ठीक है ना. सो दिस इज इनकम डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, दिस इज द पॉपुलेशन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन and this is the income distribution, and this is line of equality. US is more unequal than India. Gini coefficient is higher than that of India. Why?
Rich are very rich. Rich are very rich.
Because the corporates are richer. They have huge corporates. So few people are holding huge wealth. Trillionaire आने वाला है वहाँ कुछ दिन में. Billionaire they have passed 250 billion USD. ठीक है? This is a simple question. So if I ask you green economy is not environment, it is also social aspect. Social welfare, inclusive growth is imbibed in the green economy part. So everything is correct. Social welfare तभी अच्छा होगा when there is good governance. That is one of the prerequisite of social things. Sorry, C would be the answer. C would be the answer. Targeted government spending. So it talks about crowding in. What is that crowding in?
Leaving more money for the private to take for in loans means that
Government invests.
When you invest, so you pull invest.
Exactly, not leaving money.
When you invest, you pull.
It is more related to crowding out ki not leaving their money.
you are leaving them for money for the private source.
No, attracting, pulling. It's inducing private investment is crowding in. What you are saying is opposite of crowding out, but opposite of crowding out is not crowding in. Crowding means the government has bigger share that pushes private investors out of capital credit cycle, all because the interest rates are higher. But crowding in is a situation wherein there is a pessimism in the market and the government says, okay, we are starting the government expenditure, the G part. This will pull private investments, that because aggregate demand would again recover and this would give a confidence to private investor to invest in the economy again. So what would be correct?
Third is not correct. The third statement.
Exactly. So this is crowding out. Crowding out. Crowding in is not opposite of crowding out.
Yeah, in that case, it will become reciprocal of that present scenario. Crowding out.
Present scenario as in?
Like government is having a more larger share of the loan than the private. So in that case, if it is the opposite of crowding out, then private will have the government share and government has the private share.
I'm not getting it. Private would have government share.
No. In case of crowding out, the opposite of crowding out, what I said.
Opposite of crowding out is not an economic phenomena.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
Crowding in is not possible also. It is not possible also. Ki government is saying, okay,
Government is being replaced by
private.
In crowding out
Opposite.
opposite.
That is not the case. The government only increases its expenditure the moment it sees that the private investments are not picking up. So the government says, okay, we are increasing the investments, you follow us. And that is bound to happen right now. We are at the cusp of this private investment cycle. Private investment cycle. So there are three factors. One, demand. Corporate profitability, and third is bank NPA at lower levels. The demand is rising higher. The corporate profitability is very high, and that has created a substantial reserves. That gives a confidence to those lenders to give loans to those corporates, all because they have the debt servicing capability. पैसा generate कर रहे हैं जहाँ पे cost of capital, the return on investment is higher than the cost of capital. So this is how business works. If the cost of capital is lower than the return on investment, it is better to take the capital. And the third place, the bank NPAs are at lower level. So it gives a margin or room for those banks to increase their credit outflow, to give loans. So that would usher in more private investments picking up in the coming years. Cost of capital. So the additional is, अगर cost of capital से कम return on investment है तो bankruptcy है. Then you are near the bankruptcy. But if I say how third is, if I ask you how third is correct, exactly, actual quantitative increase in or the economic activity getting generated. Quantitative नहीं कह करके बोलो कि the economy जो sphere था ना, that is getting broader rather than the price getting higher. ठीक है? So A, C is the correct answer. So this is it. So it was an extended session. So tomorrow you will have banking and monetary policy. ठीक है? Okay. Okay. समझ में आया? Most of them तो आप